This is the ultimate video series for the Tennessee football fan. 6 decades of Vols legends in one room for one full day, telling the stories that made Tennessee Volunteers one of the best college football programs in the nation. Names that reflect history: Bill Bates, Bill Battle, Eddie Brown, Keith DeLong, Darrell Dickey, Doug Dickey, Frank Emanuel, Coach Philip Fulmer, Haywood Harris, Condridge Holloway, Bob Johnson, Dale Jones, Bob Kessling, Steve Kiner, Andy Kozar, Hank Laricella, Bobby Majors, Johnny Majors, Gus Manning, Peyton Manning, T. Martin, Lester McLean, Johnny Mills, Stanley Morgan, Paul Newhoff, Will Overstreet, Larry Sievers, Heath Schuler, Darwin Walker, Jason Witten. The legends of UT football telling their stories, the victories, the defeats, the locker room chatter. Stories about the UT legends told by the legends themselves. And it's all here for you, the Volunteer fan. Now sit back and relax because, as John Ward would say, it's football time in Tennessee.
We're gathered with the Tennessee legends. We have 4 head coaches with us. We've got national champion players. We've got all SEC players, players of the year on the SEC. This is kind of a chance for us to talk about the great moments, the great players, great games in Tennessee history. So we'd like you to open up and anything you have to say about your former teammates, your coaches, or any experiences you had at Tennessee. We'd love to hear them. I guess we should start with the backbone of Tennessee football, which is General Neyland. And Gus Manning is, I guess, been around more Tennessee games than anybody, over 600 in his career. And you were worked for the General, Gus. Why don't you talk about how the General approached Tennessee football and how he built Tennessee football?
Well, General was always all business, you know. He everything was well planned. He was a great organizer, a great athlete at West Point, you know. He was a pitcher on the baseball team, won 35 games while at West Point. The heavyweight boxing champion for 3 years at West Point. Also was a starting in on the football team. So then he served in the Army during World War II out at Calcutta. He was in charge of supplying the supplies over the hump to the boys in Europe. So he was a great organizer, but a good guy to work for. Everybody thought he was aloof and you couldn't get close to him. But once you got to know him, he was real funny and real clever. He always enjoyed getting after the trainer all the time, Mickey O'Brien. That was one of the things that he really worked at real hard. Mickey never knew when he was kidding or when he was real business. But it was a great working for the guy. He visualized everything. He could look at a play and tell you who missed their assignment. He could tell you how long a punt was up in the air and what happened to a play that wouldn't work. One time he sent me down to Coach Robinson. He was with Hank Laricella, was practicing quick kicking. And he said, go down there and tell Robbie to don't be coaching Hank. He said, he's already the best quick kicker in the world. So I went down there and told Coach Robinson, I said, Coach, General sent me down here. He said, don't be teaching Hank anymore about quick kicking. He said, he already knows one. I wish you'd seen the look on Harvey Robinson's face when I said that. General, when I went back up there, he said, did you tell him? I said, yes. General was always worried about people watching practice. And occasionally he'd send me over on Cherokee Bluff, you know, to see who was over there looking. And actually, there's a place where people go over and just have a little time with their lady friends and so forth. So I'd go over there. I went over there one day, and this couple was over there, a nice-looking couple, and they weren't paying attention to our football practice. I went back and told the General. So the second day, he sent me back up there again.
Did you take a lady friend this time?
But the second time I went back up there, same couple. So I went back and told the General. I said, there's nothing going on there, General. He said, by God, if they're at the bar, I'm going with you.
Hank, you played for the General. How was he to play for?
Oh, it was really a great experience. I was fortunate that the General happened to be in New Orleans in the end of the football season of 1947 when I was still in high school. He saw me play a high school playoff game, just not scheduled. Coaches, as you know, always looking for players. So he was in New Orleans visiting. We were playing a high school game, and he came by to see the game, and I played well. And he contacted me the following week and had me come to Knoxville. I was supposed to be there for 3 days and then go on another stop on the way back. Well, I ended up spending my whole week in Knoxville, and the spring practice, they had me in the uniform and practicing and everything. But the general was truly, and I'm going to say a few words because Andy Kozar has spent his adult life studying the history of Bob Neyland, so he'll be specific. But the great thing about Bob Neyland was he was, as Gus said, well organized. He had himself surrounded by former players. All of his staff were former Tennessee players. He did the coaching during the week. And on Saturday, he sat on, if any of you have noticed pictures of him, he used to sit on a chair on the sideline. And he sat on and watched the game and hardly injected himself too much into the game. Now, of course, we played for him in the latter part of his coaching career. But he prepared the players, the coaches, and everything for Saturday. And he didn't have to do coaching on the sideline the day of the game. He was really a great organizer, and as Gus said, his experience, of course, military experience, gave him the ability to be able to prepare these things.
Did he give you those fiery pregame speeches, or what was his pregame?
Sometimes, yes, but not a big fire and windstorm guy. We'd go through the maxims every Saturday, as all of these guys have experienced. It all began with him, and I think Andy again can give you a little more history of how he derived for those maxims. But it was truly a great experience because he commanded total presence. Everyone respected him, not only the Tennessee family, if you would, but he was respected around the country as one of the premier coaches at that time of all times. And I think it was a correct understanding of him because he really was truly great.
Andy, I know you put together a book on him. What did you learn now that you didn't know when you were playing?
I don't have enough time to tell you everything, but I can tell you my experience is quite different from Gus's and Hank's. Hank was one of his favorites. He went down to visit Hank and talk to him. I didn't speak to Neyland one-to-one, but about 4 times in the 5 years I was there. But he was very, very good to me, and he operated very unusually. He was a general, and he gave out orders, so to speak. I remember one time we were out in the field lining up, and the fullback is supposed to be 3.5 yards back and in a certain position for different plays, if it was a spinning play or if it was a 50 series or whatever. And we're out there, and I'm standing in my position, and Harvey Robinson is right next to me, and General's over there, and General says, "Harvey, tell Andy to move over an inch." And I just moved over. I said, and Harvey repeated it. And he sent all of his orders through these other people and so forth. But the interesting thing about Neyland was that in reading his diaries and reading much of what he thought about his own career and so forth, it's amazing. His lineage goes all the way back to Walter Camp. I mean, he used Walter Camp and coaching at Yale, talked a lot about morale, keeping the team together, playing as a team, and so forth. And then the people at Harvard, his coach, Charles Daly, was an All-American at Harvard, and he coached him at Army, and I bought a copy of the 1921 book by Charles Daly, and I passed one on to Philip one time. I had an extra copy, and in it, in the front cover, are the first six maxims. Neyland had 38 maxims that he eventually developed, but those first 6 came from Daly, and then he had a guy named Pot Graves as his line coach, where he learned that stuff. And there was a guy named Gloomy Dobie. I guess most of you guys, he coached at Colgate, he coached at Washington. He had a phenomenal coaching career at Navy. And it was back then, everybody ran the unbalanced line, and he was very interested in going to a balanced line. He said you could hit the tackle a lot quicker with a balanced line, and Dobie showed that, and he was not reluctant to give credit to other people where he learned things. Wallace Wade was a good friend of his, and he learned quite a bit from Wallace Wade. But all through his writings, he talked about the various people that he learned from, and of course he had a lot of good ideas of his own. And when he was at West Point, he worked for MacArthur as his aide for about a year. Red Blake was a student and playing at that particular time. And I think one of the things that I was telling Hank that probably broke his heart was when MacArthur left to go to the Philippines. Neyland was his aide, of course, and as I said, and he asked Red Blake to go with him to the Philippines. I think Neyland, it would have been a whole change in history, because I think Neyland may have gone with him because he thought so much of MacArthur. He wrote about him all the time, and even after that, he was quite enamored with the man and what he had accomplished in his life. But Neyland was bright. He was funny. I mean, he had a great sense of humor. He always did these soliloquies. He would do poetry, whatever, on the field, and would always talk about teamwork and whatnot. But he was a man that would come out on the field, and I mean, he drew respect. Everybody, we were afraid of him, most of us. Atkins wasn't afraid of him, Doug Atkins, a couple of other guys, but we were afraid of him, yet we would do anything in the world. And we came from a generation of kids who were taught by their parents to respect authority, and that's why I feel for all these other coaches here. I think a lot of that's lost, and it's a little more difficult to coach today than it was back in his day. I don't take anything away from him, but he was a great man, a great coach. I'll finish with saying that I think when Bud Wilkinson wrote his book on defense, right in the front of that book, it says very clearly, he says, I learned my defense from General Neyland, as he was the master of defense. And I heard that Landry did the same thing, and a lot of people used his defenses in their coaching.
Coach, you were recruited by General Neyland, weren't you?
Yes, Bob. We were the last high school group that signed under Neyland, General Neyland. We were signed in December of 1952, and unfortunately, from our standpoint, he retired from coaching between that time and the Cotton Bowl of New Year's Day 1953 when they played Texas, and Harvey Robinson became the head football coach. And they retained the entire staff that Neyland had: Burr West, Farmer Johnson, Harvey Robinson. Well, Harvey Robinson became the head coach. Chan Caldwell, Al Hust, all of them played for Neyland, as Andy and Hank had mentioned. I didn't get to know the general when I was a player. I don't think he ever called me by name. I don't think he ever spoke. He might have nodded, but a long time. I did get to know him rather well. For a young man, I coached here 3 years, and so I got to know the general very well, because I'd go back and ask him questions, and he was very rarely too busy to answer questions about the wing-back technique and what certain things came from and why he did it. And I think he relished that opportunity to talk to somebody young was wanting to learn what he knew. And I was around him at Coach Wyatt's house. Bowden Wyatt and General Neyland had a great rapport when I was coaching here. And I do remember, Gus, you're talking about how serious he was about business, but he had a good sense of humor, and he enjoyed having some fun. He was a great dancer and an outstanding bridge player. And I remember him saying once that he was one of the 2 best dancers in West Point history, and he might have been second only to the great Robert E. Lee. And he loved dancing, he loved bridge, and he wasn't a jokester, but he had a good sense of humor, and he and Coach White had a wonderful relationship when I was here. I had a memory, a personal memory, because my dad and I came up here twice as I was recruited. Second time we took a bus from the main highway, 64, from Memphis to Knoxville. Got up before daylight, and it's a big snow they had for Kentucky, Tennessee in 1952. We took a bus and got here just and missed the first play of the scrimmage, and Tennessee scored on a 66-yard run by their fullback. My dad and I walked from the Ellis and Ernest drugstore down Stadium Drive. We heard the roar, so we missed the first play. And I met the general after the game on Sunday at the training table. I forget where we stayed that night before, maybe in the stadium. But we had breakfast there with a lot of other recruits, and the team was there for breakfast. So Farmer Johnson, who had played for Neyland in the late 20s, was his defensive line coach, and he was recruiting me. He took my father and me back to where the general was having dinner with Mr. Jim Thompson's little kitchen back there and a little small office that the general had. And we met, and I don't remember exactly what he said. He wasn't a man of many words to a youngster like me. And I weighed 150 pounds. And the general says, how much do you weigh, Majors? And before I could say 155, sir, which is probably stretching, he says, Farmer Johnson says, 165, General. And 3 years later, in 1955, I played the whole game against Georgia Tech, 60 minutes and never left the game. And after the game, we tied 7-7, and my brother Joe was here visiting from Alabama. He was a freshman at Alabama. And Joe remembered this story. I'd forgotten it until last year. And he says, John, after the game, General passed you, and you had stripped down going to the shower. He says, Majors, get on the scales. He was athletic director at that time. So I got on the scales. He says, 147. I knew Farmer was lying to me. that was 3 years later. But he was a man that we all respected, of course, and I'm pleased I got a chance to know him. And he would say, the final thing I think I can say right now is that when he was in town, he very rarely missed a staff meeting when Coach White was head coach. He'd sit in there a few minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes an hour. Then he'd say what he wanted to say. He'd let the other coaches do most of the talking. He'd make his point. I'm out of here. You've heard enough of me. But most of the time he'd say, go with the big man. Because Skeeter Bailey, John Bailey, was a great coach. He liked the little guys. He liked the guy with scramble block and peel back and intimidate people on cutting below the knees. But he always said, go with the big man. And he always, in the spring, wore his khaki shorts, quite often without a shirt, no socks, like Steve Conner here, no socks, and his loafers. Always had a stopwatch in his hand, timing the kickers and the passers. We were timed on kicking and passing always. I don't remember him ever saying anything to the coaches on the field at that time because he was the athletic director, but they all respected him, and it was General this and General that.
Were they tough practices, Hank? How long would they go, a typical practice?
No, that was a big surprise to me when I decided to go to Tennessee. I was told by those who were aware of Neyland that, you're going to work hard and you're going to be overextended and so forth and so on. That wasn't true, and maybe it was because of the talent of our team. But our last year, Andy, we were divided then into offensive and defensive teams, and you didn't spend as much time collectively on the overall game. But 2 hours was the most we would practice during the week. And once the season started, there was no more heavy hitting at all. And he had his game planned. He had his team prepared. And a lot of that preceded the Saturday afternoon when you had to fight up and down the sideline. But I want to add one thing that I was experienced, and that was, I guess I may have been the last of Neyland's players to see him before he passed away. He was passed away in a hospital in New Orleans. He was there at the Ashland Hospital, and had spent some time, and I had a chance to visit with him a number of times. And it was just an experience that I'll always remember. But the great thing about, again, that is mentioned about he minimized and his theory of the game was so concentrated on basic things. And I can remember so well when it was defense won football games, and his whole theory was based on defense. And we were talking about this yesterday. We experienced the two-platoon system coming in 1949. Prior to that, you didn't have two-platoon. And before the season, to decide who would play offense and who would play defense, he got his coaching staff together and says, I want the best players, the best 11 players at positions that we have on the defense. The offense is going to have to scramble for itself. I want my best players on the defensive team. And his theory was, you know, it was possession of the football was not critical to him. He'd say, you can have the ball anytime you want. You take it on your 20-yard line, 25-yard line, and you try to go 70 or 75 yards against my Tennessee defense. You're going to fumble. You're going to throw an interception, you know, block, whatever it may be. We're going to get the ball, and we are going to go from there. I never forget when, Andy, we were sophomores. We were playing Vanderbilt in Knoxville. At the opening play of the second quarter, we were leading 19-0, and we had not scored a first down. We blocked the punt, picked it up, and ran it for a touchdown. We intercepted the pass, ran it for a touchdown. There was a fumble we recovered, and on the first play from recovery, I threw a touchdown pass, and effectively that's not a first down. But we were leading 19-0, and we had not scored a first down.
The best athletes were always on defense.
Football has now evolved.
So
always on defense.
Now it's a mental test. The good grades go on
Right
offense,
there.
you know.
I bet Coach Keffigo was pissed about the kicking game over there after 3 touchdowns right there.
Bob, he put his stamp on all of his people. We played under Robinson 2 years, Harvey Robinson, and 2 years under Bowden White. And so just like Hank said, having the ball was not near as important as where you got the ball. And the tailbacks called the plays in the single wing offense at Tennessee single wing. And Bowden White was a great coach and a great motivator. And Harvey Robinson was an outstanding man, an outstanding coach. He knew football. It was a tough situation to succeed the general with the same staff he had, but he's a wonderful man, and they knew football. The last thing Bowden White would tell tailbacks, he'd always have a little index card, and it would have his 3 or 4 favorite passes of the game. A little different, Darrell, than what you guys learned through the years and how you handle a bigger game plan, but you handle it well, extremely well. And he'd have about, 4 or 5 of the favorite runs and 2 or 3 of the favorite passes of the day. And we'd study our plays. I studied mine during the week, particularly Thursday and Friday night and Saturday morning, and I thought the whole list. And the last thing he'd tell us, the 3 tailbacks, when we left his meeting, he said, Johnny, if you can't think of anything else to do, just kick the blame ball. So we quick kick on second down, quick kick on third down. And we lined up in deep kick on our own 10-yard line and punt on deep kick on third down. And on rare occasions, we quick kicked on first down.
Had to kick if you were
Easy
tailback.
call. It's easy to say, please, Coach White, if I just called a quick kick.
Gus, what's your favorite general story?
Oh, I've got several of them. One of them was we were down at the Gator Bowl playing, and back in those days, they had the banquet after the game, and we won the ball game against Texas A&M, and they gave us a authentic Gator ball. And the general told me, he said, take that back to the room. My room was the hospitality room, and at that particular time, he had all of his cronies in there with him after the game in the suite there, and also one of them, Scrappy Moore, was there. Scrappy Moore was the coach at Chattanooga, and what a character he was, you know. He'd call me up occasionally and tell me, he said, the guarantee's all right, but the entertainment fund's not worth a damn. But anyway, they'd been there and had a few drinks, and they decided, said, show us how we won that game, Scrappy. Scrappy gets the football and puts it down and kicks it. He kicks it into a mirror in my room and just smashes it. So they talked around there a few minutes later, and the general told him again, said, Scrappy, show us how we won that game. And I had this big picture window, and Scrappy kicked it, broke the window. So we got back to Knoxville, and anytime the general called you up to his office, and when you go in, he said, close that door, you knew damn well you're in trouble. So I got in there, and he said, they just got the bill from Ponte Vedra Club. He said, this breakage in your room, said, what caused all of this? I said, that's where you and Scrappy were kicking those field goals. He said, ain't a damn thing wrong with that.
John Bailey played for General Neyland, and John Bailey and Bowden White and Bob Woodruff were all teammates on the great 38 team. And Coach Bailey was one of the great people that I've ever known. And he told me when he was driving the General once, when they were back here coaching, underneath him as athletic director, said they'd been out a little late that night and had a little more ancient age bourbon than they needed. And said Skeeter, John Bailey, was driving the car and says Neyland was in the front seat, you know, kind of had his head back and arrested him. And all of a sudden, Neyland says, Bailey, stop the car. Stop the car. Stop the that blame car right now. He said, he didn't know why now. He didn't see anybody coming this way. This way is a two-lane highway, but he pulled over like the general said. So the general gets out of the car, reaches over and gets a bunch of rocks in the gravel, starts throwing at this billboard that had ancient age plastered on it. 60-year-old man.
On the general, one more thing that was, he wasn't one to give these pep speeches too much. However, Andy, if you recall, we were playing in the Cotton Bowl in New Year's Day 1951 against a big, talented Texas team that graduated. Of the graduating group, they must have had 10 or 12 that were in the pros the following year. And we were the underdogs going into that game. And we were playing in Dallas, of course. And we were in the little locker room there that we were occupying before the game. And that big Texas band with about 300 in the band, they were right outside of our locker room there, and they were playing the Eyes of Texas are upon you, up and down and back and forth. And finally, when the general could get enough quiet, he said, guys, let me tell you all something. It's a big, good Texas team we're going to be playing. Don't be surprised if you come in at halftime, you'll be following. He said, but when this ball game's over, he says, our conditioning is going to win this ball game. And when the ball game's over, they won't be playing the Eyes of Texas. They'll be playing the Tennessee Wall. And sure enough, we won that ball game, which was a critical game during our time.
That was a great, great win.
Yeah.
Of course, the general had the single wing. Times changed. Coach Dickey, you came in the 60s, 64, got away from the single wing. Talk about that transition. Was that difficult for you to do that?
Well, Coach Woodruff had called me and asked me whether I'd be interested in coming to Tennessee as a head coach, and he said, you have to go by Union City, Tennessee. The man out there by the name of Tom Elam, and he has to interview you. He is chairman of the board of the trustees of the university, and he has to interview you before you can come to Knoxville. So I flew out there and landed at a little place in West Tennessee, and then Tom Elam picked me up, and we drove around for a little while. He interviewed me, and he was a lawyer, country lawyer. And finally he said, how are you going to make the transition from the single wing to the T formation? I said, it's really simple, Tom. I said, I'm going to take that blocking back out of the game, and we're going to put a quarterback in there and go on about our business. And he didn't believe it was that easy. Of course, it wasn't. But he bought the deal. So we came to Knoxville, and, all of us who didn't play for Neyland or know him have a great gratitude at the University of Tennessee for his presence. When you look at Tennessee, he was an icon in college football. Bud Wilkinson, Fritz Chrysler, Bob Neyland were people who set the standards of the day with assistant coaches, with the way the game was played. They managed the rules committee, all kinds of things. And we're very fortunate at Tennessee, in the history of Tennessee, to have had him there, because it set a standard that I think all the rest of us have over the years tried to live with. And it's very difficult, extremely difficult. But he set that standard, and it's been great to be a part of it. And everybody here has contributed in some way to trying to match those standards of national championship, conference championship performance out of it. So in our case, they had been through about 5 years where things were not as healthy as everybody would like for them to be. And so Coach Woodruff became the athletic director, and I became the head football coach. And it was our challenge to revitalize the Tennessee spirit. And we were very fortunate that there were several people in Tennessee available in the early December of 1963 to come. Bob Johnson down here being one of them. The first call I made was on a guy that didn't come to Tennessee. He was in Knoxville named D.D. Lewis. And the second call I made was to Bob Johnson in Cleveland, Tennessee, and it cost me about 65 cents to buy Bob Johnson a hamburger for lunch one day. He's the cheapest recruit that ever came to Tennessee. I assure you that. He didn't even make an official visit, if I can remember out of it. But we got a commitment from Bob and drove up the road a little ways. And I'll always remember Jim McDonald, who had been the interim head coach for a year, was I'm truly indebted to Jim McDonald for his ability to have been passed over as the head coach and to have said to me, get in the car, I'm going to take you recruiting. And he became an assistant athletic director. And Jim took me and we went to Cleveland, and then we went back up the road about 30 miles, rode a ferry across the Tennessee River and went up to Pikesville, Tennessee to see John Boynton. And John Boynton was about 6'4", and Bob was about 6'4", and I'd never seen anybody look like that. First two guys I ever saw at Arkansas, where I'd come from, our players all 6 feet, little old guys running around. These two guys, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven with the guys that looked like this. And so we got those two commitments, and there was another player in Tennessee that year by the name of Charlie Fulton. Ironically, Charlie Fulton would have been one of the great tailbacks probably in the history of the Tennessee single wing. His high school team was 11-0 running the single wing, and but he came to be a quarterback for us, and so he was really quick and fast, and those three people kind of set the stage of talent that came in that freshman class in December. There were other people that were part of that, and we had a number of players there that could play the game very well. So we began to build a team, and from there, I think the tradition of the Tennessee history came back for us, and the people came back. The people believed we were going to bring back the good old days of Tennessee, and we were able, fortunately, to do that by people that were there from Columbus, Ohio, or Norfolk, Virginia, or Tampa, Florida, for Tennessee, all of the wide recruiting that has always been at Tennessee. We were able to capitalize on that, and I think Neyland, again, set that standard. Being a West Pointer, he was comfortable with people from all over the country. And we've been able to do that at Tennessee consistently since 1927 or 28. We have consistently built our teams from all over the country with people. You see in this room from Mobile, Alabama to Philadelphia to wherever people have come from to play at Tennessee. That's been one of our traditions. And a lot of those people have lived in Knoxville over the years. A lot of them have come. Andy Cozart, one of the great examples, came back to the university. Hank wasn't. He went back to New Orleans, where he owns the town. But there have been some people, a lot of them have stayed because it's a good place. Keith DeLong over here is one has stayed there. So that tradition was there, recruiting widespread, coming back. We were able to capitalize on that. We got a little speed going for us, and we had some good breaks. We were lucky, got some things going for us, and the ball bounced in the right direction, and we had, I think, a wonderful time of making some transition of Tennessee to the T formation, and along the way with Charlie Fulton, Dewey Warren was already there, and we had a guy named Bubba White. And when we won a championship in 1967, all three of them started at least 2 games during the year at quarterback. If you remember, Bubba White was featured on Sports Illustrated as the greatest third-string quarterback in the world. So we had some great moments in the next year. Of course, he was the starting quarterback, but there were players along the way who had a great influence. Lester McLean, of course, came and broke the color line for us at Tennessee, and certainly has had a great career in the state of Tennessee since then. And we had a lot of good things happen, Bob.
Bob, he mentioned you were his first recruits. Everybody knows you as a great center, but starting off, you weren't great when you started off at center at Tennessee, were you?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure the NCAA would allow this, but Coach Dickey sent Charlie Fulton and Johnny Mills and I to the absolute boonies in Tellico Mountain, Tennessee. Now, 20 years ago, there was nothing there. And to show you what a great place it was, Johnny Mills, for entertainment, this was all the entertainment there was, taught us how to tree ride. You shinny up a little tree and you swing back and forth. Johnny got one a little too big, went high, swung over. It didn't go all the way down. And Fulton and I had some great coaching points. Like, let go with your legs, Johnny. And so Johnny let his legs down. His hands just fell with a handful of bark. He fell about 35 feet. Whomp, knocked him out. We put him on the back of a horse and led him out of the woods. And he missed the first couple games. But anyway, backing up.
I asked Coach Dickey while this was going on, why did he do that to us? We thought he liked us. We thought we were players, and he put us in the absolute end of the earth. And we liked to starve to death. Charlie Fulton took up frog gigging just because we was out of food.
That's the truth.
Charlie said, we'll get us a sharp stick, and we'll go back there in that pond at night, we'll get us something to eat. I never did understand.
Well, you know, today they bring all the players back for the second 6 weeks of summer school to get them a little extra ready to start the season. Everybody's hanging around, all the kids working out and all that. We didn't have any of those kind of rules. We couldn't do any of that stuff. So we just sent them down to a camp down there. They got paid for working at this camp down there where they could get their special kind of conditioning done to get ready for the season.
Bob, you know why we really went? Because Charlie Fulton was a single-wing tailback, and I was less than a perfect snapper. And I swear that our freshman spring, going into our sophomore year, we couldn't complete a center quarterback exchange. It was awful. And Johnny just got dragged along so Fulton could have somebody to throw to.
Yeah, and I could throw it better than Charlie could. I mean, they had a tire hanging on that goalpost there, and Charlie and I would take turns throwing at the tire, and I could throw it through that tire better than Charlie could. And I said, passing game ain't going to help us much this year.
But they could catch you, but they couldn't catch Fulton.
Well, anybody could catch me. That wasn't a hard thing to do.
Lester, you came in. Coach Dickey mentioned the fact you broke the color barrier and came on and had a great career at Tennessee. Talk about how difficult that was for you. You had to take a big step, didn't you?
Well, I'm sure it's a big step, and however, it didn't seem as big and difficult at that time. Well, maybe initially, but it wasn't that difficult because so many people worked so hard to make it an easy thing. I didn't play with Coach Nalen, but I do believe, I'm assuming, did Coach Nalen come up with, guys, we're going to go the hard way, we're not going to throw the ball, we're going to protect their passer, pressure theirs. We're going to win with the kicking game.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know, I think Coach Nalen coached all of us. He just wasn't around when I was there, but we heard
some things. I thought Coach Dickey made those maxims up. He never told anybody.
I'll tell you a story about the maximum. I'll tell you a story about the maximum. When I started playing college football for Bob Woodruff in the 50s, in 1951, I'm a sophomore, and I go to the first team get-together to play the game, and we're all sitting there waiting on this speech from Coach Woodruff, and he goes to the board and he writes, team that makes the fewest mistakes usually wins, and he starts down through Nealon's maxims. I don't know what that is. He's writing this stuff on the board, and I figured, well, that's okay, and so went through my career in every game. He did the same thing. So I got out of college, and I went to the University of Arkansas as assistant football coach. Frank Broyles had played for Bobby Dodd and had coached for Bobby Dodd at Georgia Tech, who had played for Neyland. So first game, we're getting ready. I'm assistant coach. I walk in, wait for Broyles to give his big speech, and he goes in, he writes, team that makes the fewest mistakes usually on the board up there, and he goes through this same litany of stuff that I'd had when I knew that didn't always work, that stuff. But he did the same thing. So, and I became a head coach. I got there, and these guys are there, and I didn't know what else to do for a game, but write the team that makes the fewest mistakes usually wins. So I started doing that, you know. And I get out of coaching, and I come back. My son Darrell is there. He's playing for John Majors. I go in to see him there for the game, and John, he doesn't know any better either. He writes team that makes the fewest mistake usually wins on the board because he's a throwback to him, you know. And so we go along, and now Philip over here, he's got them printed on the wall in the dressing room, and the team recites these things the same. So from Walter Camp in 1900 or something, wherever that is, for almost 100 years, somebody's made use of the maxims. They even tried to read them out to the crowd here a couple of years ago. I didn't go over very big. They didn't understand. Team makes the fewest mistakes. They didn't know anything about it.
To get back to Lester's comment about passing the ball, Neyland didn't, want to throw the ball. He avoided it at all possible times. And we recruited, apparently, Tex Davis from Texas, obviously. And he was a tremendous receiver. And when he's being recruited, he asked the general, he said, how often do you throw the ball? He said 30 or 40 times. And Tex said, oh, my God. So he signed and came in. And after about 2 years, he said, I didn't know he meant for a year, for a season, 40 times. And he was bitter about that for a long time. It was too funny.
Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis played for those same game maxims.
Right.
In and Colonel Earl Blake's book, You Have to Pay the Price, the Earl Blake story. Right. He quotes the game maxims and he credits Charles Daly, Colonel Daly.
Right. He heard the same things in that Irish brogue. He said that was Charles Daly. And I referred to that in my book because it was.
Coach Battle's going to find a way to license them.
I used them too.
Yeah. Everybody used them. Leslie, back to you a little bit. You finally, Coach Dickey finally opened it up a little bit, started throwing the ball to you a little bit, didn't they?
Right. That was an interesting experience. Now, let me tell you, I probably would not have been able to catch the ball had it not been for Johnny Mills. And I learned from him, and Coach Battle was my receiver coach. So that was interesting, but before we learned to catch it, we did learn that we blocked first. And it was interesting. I remember being a player, and I thought, well, throwing the ball has to be important because scoring and all this, but I guess once the careers are with, I learned that those who didn't turn the ball over, that ran the ball well, whether they threw it or not, won championships. And so that was a great experience that I learned. It still, I guess it applies to everything I've seen in my lifetime with ball. Pro ball, they throw the ball a lot, but those who execute the run and play great defense seem to win the championships. But that was a wonderful experience. I think I go back to my the most impressive thing in my life was to have entered the first game of my career. And we played Georgia they called it Doug's Turf. That was the first time we had the tartan turf. And week before the game, I knew I was going to get to play, but Coach Dickey asked me, was I going to be ready because I had pulled a muscle in my groin. I told him, yes, I was definitely going to play. I was going to be ready to play. And as the game progressed, I remember going in the game for the first time, and you're all keyed up to play, but hearing our crowd kind of stand up and give you an ovation when you hadn't proved anything, hadn't accomplished a thing, and get an ovation from your crowd to go in the game that's a wonderful thing. That helps the experience and make things go a lot easier, and the pressure is a lot easier when you have that type of support.
Defense was a key during that time as well. Linebacker, we got some linebackers sitting over there. Frank, I guess you were the first one to step up and come to Tennessee and talk about how you wound up there and playing for Coach Dickey.
Well, I was there during the transition. You're talking about us running the single wing and going to the T formation.
Now you start off at center. Didn't you play center a little bit?
Yes. I was a single wing offensive center and defensive linebacker. Of course, we went both ways. We had stayed in the game. But Coach Majors was talking about the recruiting trip, and Bowden White recruited me and Skeeter Bailey and Ralph Chancey. And I was thinking as I was listening to him talk, I came from Virginia, the East Coast over there, Norfolk area, Tidewood area, and Skeeter Bailey and Coach Chancey wanted me to come over in the summertime so I could get caught up ahead of the game in the study so we have more time in the fall for football and so forth, and you could do those things back then. So I graduated from high school on a Wednesday, and I left for Knoxville on a Thursday. And I went over of course we had the dorms then. I was in the dorm, and if you'd ever back then in the 60s been on a campus in the summertime at the university, it was quite quiet and not a lot of people there. And of course I got homesick badly, and I stayed about 2 weeks. This was in June, and I told some of the other fellows that were there, I said, I've got to go home to Mom and Dad. I said, this is a long ways away from home, and there's no way I can stay here. I said, this is too far. I've made a big mistake. So I got enough money to catch a bus to go back home, and I got back home, and I had a friend of mine pick me up because I was kind of afraid to tell my mom and dad I'd come home from the summer and couldn't deal with going over there to Knoxville. And as I was coming down my street, I saw there was a strange car in front of the house. So cousin drops me off. I go in the house there and open the door, and there sits Coach Bailey, Coach Chansey, and Bowden Wyatt. And they had flown over. Of course, got back long before I did. Boy, I was in a world of hurt, I knew. And they said, thank God, they said, Frank, just, it was too soon. You graduated from high school. You didn't have any fun this summer. Just stay here and come back in the fall. Of course, I did. Things were fine then. But my first experience at Tennessee, I was a lonely camper. But after getting up there and the group coming in '62 and through Coach Dickey, we had 3 head football coaches. We had Bowden Wyatt, as was stated, Jim McDonald, and of course Coach Dickey. And the transition during that era of running the single wing and all of the things that were going on to the T formation, I'll never forget. It's like Paul's wife said at breakfast yesterday, says, you guys can't remember where you parked your car. And you remember all these stories. But I'll never forget, we came out and, I forget the game, we came out and started running the single wing, and Coach Dickey sent in the T formation, and they come out and line up in the T, and the crowd, everybody, the 52,000 or whatever it was, then stood up, and it was just phenomenal, the cheers and the noise, because we were going to the T formation, which everybody had already done. But to go through and experience with the players the transition to the different style of football and to be a linebacker under that scheme that we started using after, of course, Coach Dickey came there because he was in my junior and senior year, running through the T that he'd started back or we started doing at that time. And then as many of you might know, I know all of us as groups feel like we're so significant, the periods we went through at the university. But the group that I came in with from 62 through 65, 66, as I stated, had 3 coaches. We were extremely close. We lost 3 of our football coaches during that era. We lost 2 football players, and Tom Fisher and Crumbecker. And we lost me for quarter also, where I had to take a leave of absence because we'd lost the football game to Vanderbilt.
I believe you tried to beat up the
I tried to win it after the game, some of us, yeah. But but it made us.
I'd forgotten that, Frank.
Hey,
you got back for spring practice.
That's right. I got back for spring practice. But
Coach was smart.
But
he didn't want to suspend you.
He took another semester off.
That's
You
right.
hitchhiked home, right? How far did you get?
Yes, not very far, but really it made that group I feel like rally around. And I know Coach Dickey, as I sit and think about it, boy, he was a very unique person. And I know all of the coaches of here have dealt with some of us at that age that was tough, but thank God they did the right things in 99% of the cases, I'm sure, to help us become better men and better players. But that transition period there of all of those kinds of things that I had to experience, it's just the value of it. And as has been said, the General Neyland philosophy and that kicking game and the maxims and all of those things are such an embedded part of all of us. And Lester put it right. It's a part of life. It's like we were talking earlier, and the discipline. I think that's the key word. I learned a long time ago that, there is 2 kinds of pain, and one of them is a pain of discipline, and the other one's a pain of regret. And so we discipline ourselves in the game of football, which Majors and Coach Dickey and all of the other coaches that are around here that helped us. It's helped us become better people and a lot better in the lives we live now.
Paul, you came from Columbus, Ohio. How'd you get away from Woody up there during that time?
I was a split in high school, Bob. And Woody's philosophy of 3 yards in a cloud of dust, I mean, I wasn't real sharp, but I figured there's not much future there. I almost wound up going to Indiana. Jim McDonald came into Columbus, Ohio on a recruiting trip and actually had a little luncheon for several of the ball players in the Columbus area that they were interested in recruiting, and I committed to it. But back then, I didn't know what I was going to do 6 hours from that time. I wound up, I didn't go to the luncheon, but he made a special trip to come out to the high school. Next day, he pulled me out of class, and I thought I was going to get suspended for something or get the old paddling for something, And he sat down and we talked, and he said we'd like for you to come down to the University of Tennessee, and I wasn't even sure where Tennessee was. And Jim McDonald said, we'll fly you down. I said, that's kind of neat. I'd never been on an airplane. My next comment was, well, are you going to fly me back? And he said, sure, we'll fly you back. But I went down there and I looked at the campus, and the first guy he had any conversation at all was a guy named Reggie Jellicourse, and these guys will tell you about him. This kid was as country as you could get. And he came up and started talking to me, and I just looked at him. I couldn't understand a word he was saying. I could not. I mean, I started looking around and saying, am I at the right place? Well, I had a good time. They showed us a good time. And then I had a late afternoon flight that day, and they took me into the coach's office, which was in the stadium at that time. And they sat me down. They put a reel of film on, a highlight film. And I'd heard a little bit about the Southeastern Conference. I grew up, my grandfather used to take me and my brother and my cousin to all the Ohio State games, so I was really in tune with the Big Ten, almost signed with Indiana. But I was watching this reel, and back then the Big Ten, it was the bigger, the stronger, the slower you were, the better it was. I wasn't sure I could play in the Big Ten. I wasn't all that big. But as I watched this reel, and of course they left me in there by myself. I'm looking around, I'm looking out the window saying, what am I doing here? But anyway, I watched this reel, and the more I watched it, the more I convinced myself that I could play in the Southeastern Conference. And I got to think about
as a linebacker or a split end?
As a split end.
You weren't that good, Paul.
And I thought, and as I was watching this, I said, gee whiz, I think I can really play here. So I wound up signing with the University of Tennessee, and Coach Dickey came in right at the start of my sophomore year. And I'll never forget the day they introduced him. They had a big introduction type thing. They had it at McClung Museum. And we're all sitting there, and in comes this guy. They're introducing him. He's going to be the next head coach, and a big old lanky, gangly type guy, and he had a cowboy hat on. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm saying, where did they get this yahoo? You got to be kidding me. And, of course, Coach Dickey was into the statistic stuff, too. You cross the 30-yard line so much, and you're going to score so many times, and cross the 50, and this and that, and 7 points, 3 points. And I used to look at him, I'd say to myself, is this guy just yanking our string, or is this for real? But it turned out that he pretty well knew what he was doing. And as he had some adverse conditions that happened too. I mean, here's a young coach who came in, first head coaching job, I believe, assembled his staff, had to go from a single wing to the T formation, which is pretty big transition. And then Coach Dickey, after he assembled his staff, I think it was a year or two later, about 2 or 3 of them were killed in an accident, and then he had to reshuffle his staff, and so he didn't really start out having things handed to him. He had to go through some adversity, and I don't think people that don't understand football, putting together your staff is very important and very crucial, and he had a setback right off the bat. But I enjoyed my years at Tennessee. My biggest break probably in my life came from Coach Dickey, and I'll be appreciative of that for the rest of my life. We were going into spring ball into my senior year, and we had 2 boys that were killed in a car wreck. 3 of them were in the car wreck. 2 of them were killed, and one of them was Tom Fisher, who was an outstanding athlete. I used to the way he would run and hit, I mean, I always looked up to Frank. Frank was serious. Frank could knock your head off. Another thing about Frank, and the good athletes, there's a difference between...
Be careful.
You can pay me later. I found out in the years in football, there's a big difference between the good athletes and the great athletes. And in my opinion, it has to do with the way you work. Your work ethic on the field moved you up to that extra level that separated the good players from the great players. And Frank was one of those players that 110%, 120% every practice. And I learned that up in Detroit, too, playing for the Lions. My best friend, Lem Barney, we were rookies together, and he's in the Hall of Fame. It was the same thing. He was the biggest character off the field, but when we were on the practice field, it was like, it was serious. It was really serious. And it was guys like that got me to I guess, maybe channel the way I participated in practice and my thinking and so forth. But Tom Fisher was killed in a car wreck, and I went to Coach Dickey, and I said, and this was spring ball, and I said, Coach, I think I can play middle linebacker. I think I have a little bit of respect from the ball players, and I said, I'd like the opportunity. And he said, well, let me think about it. And I think the next day he switched me over to defense, and I had that little couple, 2-3 weeks of spring football to learn what the middle linebacker does and all that. And that was really the biggest turning point in my life, because from there it went on to bigger and better things.
Steve, of course, you're another one of the great linebackers in Tennessee. Tell us your story. How'd you wind up with under Coach Dickey's wing?
Do you want the legal version or the illegal version?
The PG version.
Okay. I'll tell you, but I want to ask Paul, because I had heard that you moved to linebacker for a different reason than I had heard something about Tucker Frederickson or somebody.
I was a split in, yeah. Tucker Frederickson. We had, I forget who the quarterback was. I can't remember who it was, but I did a little curl pattern, and I jumped up after the ball. Of course, he threw it 10 feet high. I don't think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar could have caught it. But I went up and grabbed it, and Tucker Frederickson, and this went on into the pros, too. I never forgot that, but he hit me in the rib cage. Halftime, I was spitting blood up, but I said, this is crazy. I don't want to play offense. I'd rather be the hammer than the nail. And that's how, that kind of motivated me on getting involved with defense and all that. Yeah, that was a true story. And then it went on into the pros. He played for the Giants for a long time. That was a bloodbath. We didn't care who won or how the game turned out. We were after each other for the 4 quarters.
How did I wind up at Tennessee?
Just couldn't play quarterback for sure.
Well,
sure couldn't throw.
I went to Hillsborough High School in Tampa, and I was recruited by Florida, Miami, Florida State, and actually had signed with Florida, and then there's a series of events came about. But really, why I came to Tennessee, I think, was I was watching the Georgia Tech game my senior year, and I was a quarterback and a linebacker in high school, and like Lester was telling me earlier today, I thought I could fly when I was young. I had these. I had a lot of magical thinking, I'm trying to keep it under.
Now he's a mental health.
And I'm watching. I was watching the Georgia Tech Tennessee game, and I was watching Emmanuel and Fisher, and I think they lost the game, but it didn't matter that they lost the game. These guys were just eating people up. I mean, they were just all over the field, and part of it was a defensive scheme, and that was, let's protect our linebackers, which, let them get to make the tackles. So I liked that. I thought that was a neat idea, and I had signed with Florida, and then got released from scholarship. And the day after I got released, Vince Gibson was there, and he said, would you be interested in coming to Tennessee? And I said, sure, And that's how I wound up there.
And it turned out to be a great decision for you, right?
It's the right place at right time. I don't know. It's dumb luck, I think. I'd like to think that it was a good decision, but I think it was more luck involved than anything. Magical. Yeah, it was magical. You got to kind of believe in those things.
Hey, Bob, we got to get one of them to give us a P.W. Underwood story before we move on out of that.
Yeah, well, I don't know that some of the younger players might not know who P.W. is. I'd be glad to tell you. He was my linebacker coach the first 2 years I was at Tennessee. And then Lon Hersburn came in my senior year. And P.W. he played at Southern Mississippi. He was a defensive tackle, and he played up in Canada for, 4 or 5 years. but PW was about maybe 5'10", 280, something like that. And he looked like he had the bottom of Coke bottles on, you know, and big forearms like Popeye. And when he talked to you, you know, you were either as SOB or this or that, you know, and he had this real raspy voice, you know. He's, "You little son of a bitch, I'll kick your ass," you know.
There went that section.
And he had, I remember, like, they moved, you know, I was actually, my sophomore year, he came in and they had me, we were in the huddle, and they did instead of a circular huddle, the linebackers and DBs would get behind us and we'd get in front. And I did, you know, with spring practice, I didn't know, and I was bent over in the huddle. I had my head down like this, trying to get some air. Well, PW came up and he had the back of my helmet, and he just took his forearm and he just ripped me. I mean, he just lit me up, you know. And I was kind of, you know, so I mean, he had a way of teaching you what not to do. So I always had my head up after that.
Any other PW stories?
My favorite PW story was, I was assistant coach at the time, and Kiner was involved, I think. But they were working on the quick trap, and the 5'4" defense linebackers were with guards, and guard had blocked back, the center blocked back, and offside guard had come trap the tackle, and the tackle would back up and come around and knock the linebacker past the hole. And so Kiner was a young linebacker and having a difficult time with this deal, and so PW wore his Tennessee cap backwards, and he had play cards up in his cap, and so he had his cards up inside of his cap, missed backwards, and so finally PW got so upset with Kiner, he said, "Get out of the way, and I'll show you how to do it." So he steps up there, and Caffey goes running the B team, and he said, "Run at full speed." So those guys' eyes lit up, so now they're going to get a shot at old PW. Well,
it's Kurt Watson.
PW don't quite get up there far enough to miss that tackle. And the tackle came around and decked him, and his hat flew off, and the wind was blowing, and his play cards was flying all over the field. He was picking himself up and grunting and groaning and gathering up his play cards, and got back, and he walked up to Kiner, and he said, "Boy, you got this position so screwed up, nobody can play."
I tell you the best PW story. Maybe I had to be there. Maybe it wasn't as funny as that one. But remember when the young defensive tackle sucker punched him? Yeah. He's coaching.
Johnny Kyle.
And just out of nowhere, this sophomore defensive, big, strong kid, punched him. And he kind of, as I remembered, he drove his Coke bottle eyeglasses up into his eyebrow, cut him pretty badly. But this kid goes, boom, and PW goes, ugh. And he didn't hurt him a lick. PW looked at him, and he grabbed this kid, and he sticks his head under it. He's going, like he didn't know what to do. Coach Dickey was up in the tower, and I could hear him go, PW. And a bunch of us finally pulled him off, and PW goes, and he throws him down. The kid's laying there choking, you know, and PW had blood running, and he says, "I should have killed the kid." We were all scared of him after that.
Any other ones? No more PWs?
I wasn't under PW. I had Vince Gibson, who I was very close to, and he was just as wild. Wasn't physical, but I'll tell you what, he didn't take a second of grabbing your helmet and spitting in your face and shaking it and carrying on. But he was a pretty good defensive coordinator. Great guy.
Well, I guess if we talk about
I don't think you can pass Paul without the hit at the Gator Bowl.
We're going to get to that. We might as well go there right now. Zonka.
I mean, to me, that's legend.
It is.
This guy was tilting the scales at about 255. Our defensive tackles were 230. I can't remember. I think it was, I'm not sure when it was in the game, but as Steve was saying, we did a lot of slanting, which brings me back to Coach Gibson again. We had a little deal where the linebackers would check off. If they had a slant to one side, we'd check off by hollering out a signal. Well, I don't know who came up with this, but I'm from Columbus, Ohio. Their calls were check G and check Hall, which were old, I guess, farming deals when they wanted the mule to go left and they wanted the mule to go right. And I could never remember G and Hall, and I'd go into Gibson, I'd say, Coach, change it. Why can't we say right or left or rose and lavender or something, you know? And I'd get in the game, and I'd be all fired up and excited, and I'll tell you what, they'd run a man in motion, and I'd check, and I'd start going, check, check. You wouldn't know which right or left. And here's Doug Archibald, who was the other linebacker, and he'd holler out. I holler check, and he'd holler G, you know, or Hall, and that's the only way we could get those straight. But I used to go to Mitch and say, why are we doing this check G and check Hall stuff, you know? But that deal against Syracuse, and we played a pretty good football game. Johnny Mills caught everything that was thrown to him. Every time he caught the ball, as a matter of fact, I just scratched my head and just, I mean, this guy had like 4.9 speed. And he was a wide out. And then we had Austin Denny, who was like a 4.8 speed, you know.
He was that fast? Really?
Oh, gosh. But it was a great football game. And I can't remember exactly when it was, but that particular tackle might have got me drafted in the NFL. I don't know. But I remember Bobby Morrell. We were lined up, and Bobby Morrell was the nose guard. And all this happened in like milliseconds. I see him get blocked. There's a hole probably maybe a yard wide. And I said, oh, God. I said, you know, my first thought, what happened to Bobby, right? And then I see the quarterback drop straight back, so I figure, well, maybe it'll be a pass. Now, Zonka gives it this, and they hand the ball, I put it in his gut, and he comes up, I said, oh, God. Now, I stepped up in the hole, just did basically what came natural, and I faced him up and hit him in the chest. And my helmet rose up and caught him up under the chin and put him back on his back. Well, again, all this is happening in like milliseconds. The first thing I'm thinking, I'm wiggling my toes and wiggling my hands. I said, well, I'm not hurt. And then I jumped up off the ground. This guy's 255. I jumped up off the ground. The first thing I started, get up, Sonka. You're nothing. You're nothing. And, you know, went back to the huddle and all beat me and stuff. And I think maybe the next play they carried our entire defense into the end zone. But don't feel sorry for him. I'll tell you what, we bumped heads a few times in the NFL, and he won most of those.
You know, there's also a thing about you in the NFL. You took your Tennessee helmet to Detroit and your shoulder pads. Coach Dickey might not know you stole those and took them with you.
Well,
you painted your old Tennessee helmet silver up there, didn't you?
Right. I didn't want to. I was kind of, you know, you get used to certain equipment and stuff and shoulder pads and stuff. And I took those up there with me, and they painted my helmet for years. And eventually they wound up giving me a new one. And I'm not sure what happened to the old one, but, yeah, that's what happened.
What about practicing against Newmoff?
You know,
just looking at him, I want to get up and fight him. Every day in spring ball, we did a little deal. It was 3-on-3. I had a couple defensive linemen, a linebacker, and they get the ball to running back, and they had a couple offensive linemen. Bobby Morrell lined up on Charlie Rosenfeld. Big rivalry there. And of course, Bob was, you know, I'd line up on Bob. We fought every day. There was a big fight. Boy, I tell you what, though, they'd break it up. They'd pull me back, and I'd say, way to go, way to go. Because he'd have broke me in half, you know. And I was so happy to see fights broke up, and that, you know, that coach is pulling you back.
I'll bet everybody here will say it. But, you know, if the guy was older than you were, I mean, I thought Emmanuel was the meanest, toughest guy in the world. And I thought Connor was a little, you know, nothing, because he was younger than I am. He was a sophomore, and I was a senior. I thought Newmoff was the baddest thing going. I mean, he was fast, and he could really deliver a blow. And, you know, I do think when you're paired against somebody who's incredibly competitive, it's really good for you.
Sure.
And I think that 3-on-3 stuff was really important to me.
I want to tell you something about that Syracuse game, because I had come up from Tampa, and I went to high school in Tampa, so this was in the Gator Bowl where he had that hit on Zonka. And I was getting ready to go home, you know, because the Gator Bowl was what, like Christmas Eve or something like that? Yeah, Coach Dickey said, are you going to the Gator Bowl? I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, you want tickets? I got tickets. I'll get you tickets. Go to the Gator Bowl. I'll get you a pass to the sideline. And I thought that was just incredible. So I go home to Tampa, and I asked him, anyway, so.
I'm not sure what the rules were.
Yeah.
I think I've got a senior lapse here.
Statute of limitations.
So I get home, and you know, he said he'd get me 2 or 3 tickets. So I get these 2 buddies of mine, and we get in this old Ford and drive up to Jacksonville from Tampa. The alternator was bad and all that. Anyway, we get there, and I go to the game, and we have sideline passes. And I'm going up to Coach Dickey's room to get the tickets, and I get on the elevator, and this guy gets on the elevator with me, standing next to me. He's an offensive tackle, right? I'm looking at this guy, and it's Csonka, you know, the fullback that he's talking about. I mean, he's 6'4", 255, 260, somewhere like that. And you know, I'm looking at him, and I thought he was an offensive tackle. Then we got off the elevator, and I'm a freshman, right? I said, I'm never going to play. If I got to play against that guy. So then we go down on the sidelines, and we're watching the game, and it was really an incredible game because I think all 4 of the backs in that backfield were rushed for over 100 yards against us. And we beat them soundly.
Floyd Little had something like 240-some yards rushing, and I think Csonka had like 215 rushing against us.
We beat them soundly. Right?
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we never did stop them, but we held them.
Wow, what a great hour. Amazing memories of General Neyland, his defenses, his attitude, and the tone he set for the players and the coaches, and the decades to come. Hey, coming up next hour, we'll hear about the Vols' 6 national championships. It's a magical mix of players and coaches that make a national championship run. For the Vols, that magical mix happened 6 times. Doug Dickey.
One of the games in our era that I think set one of the tones for us was the UCLA game in 1965 after we gone, and John Mills, I think, had one of the great all-time games for Tennessee during that particular time. He was truly a gifted athlete at his position and played it as well as anybody played their position for us. And I think on that given day, that game probably did as much for the Tennessee program for a number of years as any particular game has done at a time. There have been several defining games. John played in one against Georgia Tech over the years. Darrell's team had one in the Sugar Bowl that John coached. But that particular game with UCLA, I think, was one of the games that set a national pattern for us that Neyland had established in 28 and 35 and 38. And again, we got that back again out of that particular game. And as one of them, and John may want to reflect on some of that, how he got there.
It's the game that I always think about when people ask you to reflect on your time at the University of Tennessee. The intensity of that game and the emotional vibrations that were coming off that thing is something that I've never forgotten. It's amazing. You ask people now, and I think there's probably 3 million people that were actually there in that stadium that day to see that, because everybody said, yeah, I saw that game. Well, the stadium only held like 60, 65,000 people or something. But that day, I really think, set us on our way to do better and better for the years that came on down the road, continuing to the present. Most programs kind of ebb and flow. You look back at Tennessee, they've been playing football for 100 years, 1890-something. The program was good, and then it's a little off, and it's good, and it's a little off. In the early 60s, the wagon was kind of stuck in the mud. A lot of good things weren't happening to the university, and things weren't really good. The day that Coach Dickey showed up in that cold day in McClung Museum with his cowboy hat, things started getting better. All of us didn't take to it real easy. I'll be the first to admit that in the 60s, you have to remember the context of time. The 60s was a time of great change in our country, and it was the time that most of us who had never been away from home went away to a big town like Knoxville. For a small town boy like me, that was like going to Mars. Knoxville was a big place. To have that kind of freedom away from home, to be young on the face of the earth, was a great. It just made me want to be alive. I've never been more alive in my entire life than those 4 years I was at the University of Tennessee playing football for the University of Tennessee. I mean, that's as good as it had to be when you're 18 years old to be in Knoxville, Tennessee with that UT hat on, sitting on the side of there across from the drugstore. You were somebody you were looked up to. And then when Coach Dickey came and we started winning some football games, it got even better and better and better. And I will say this, if I've known Coach Dickey since 1964, And in every meeting that I've ever had a conversation with him, I never left the meeting saying, I wonder what he means. The man was the best I've ever seen about saying what was on his mind. And when you walked out of the meeting, you were probably shaken and you remembered exactly what he said. I'll tell you one quick story. My friend Terry Bird and I went spring break to Daytona Beach. We met some girls. We entertained them.
Terry had him.
Women go to wide receivers. That was the way it was. We liked them so much, and they liked us. They came to Knoxville, spent a few nights up on 17th Street. They had a room up there, and Terry and I went over to continue entertaining them, and somehow the hotel manager got word of it. And he called the room that night at 2 in the morning. We were out after curfew. We shouldn't have been there. And we were having a dialogue with him. We didn't want to leave, and he said, we want you out of here. And we don't want to leave. These girls are registered, and everything's all right. He said, well, I'll just get in touch with Coach Dickey. Well, we were up, and we were down in that lobby quick. We were on our way out of there. And we asked him, let's keep this among ourselves if we can. It didn't work. He called Coach Dickey. We had a meeting individually with Coach Dickey the next day. Terry went first into his office. And when Terry came out, he was white, and he was shaking. He said, it's not good. I went in there and talked to Coach Dickey. He doesn't remember this, I'm sure, but I needed some guidance. I mean, I was a little loose in some areas. I wasn't focused the way Coach Dickey.
We're looking for a course.
Coach Dickey said I needed to be more focused. He said, you're out after hours, you're not paying attention. He actually wanted me to go to class, and which I thought was unreasonable. I thought I was a football player. And I, sitting across that desk from him, looking at him, he said, Mills, I'm going to tell you. He said, you better bear down. He said, you're here on a scholarship. He said, you're not here forever. He said, you better start paying attention. Otherwise, I'm going to terminate that scholarship. And your only chance to make a living, he said, you'll be up on Cumberland someplace, and you'll have a monkey on a string and a hat full of pencils, and that's the only way you're going to have to make a living. I left that office motivated. Now, I'm not saying I got it right for the rest of the time, but he had my undivided attention. And I really think what's happening with Philip and everything, Coach Magers, and everything that's happened since the early 60s is a direct result of Coach Woodruff hiring Coach Dickey, bringing him in. The wagon started rolling, and it's been rolling ever since.
Yeah, personally, I don't think there's any question about the transition that we were in, Bobby and I. When we came in, it was easy because of the foundation that you guys had laid, really going all the way back to what Dr. Kozar and Hank were talking about through the general. And we expected every week to go and win, and I think we're 30-5 with Coach Battle and Coach Dickey during that time, and it wasn't anything expected of me. Now, I am a little bit curious about what Coach Dickey was talking about. He bought Bob a 65-cent hamburger because I didn't get the hamburger. I'm not even sure Coach Dickey knew my name in the recruiting
You were
process.
as good as Bob.
And the rules were different back then, but the thing that got me over the hump to decide to come to Tennessee, obviously being in Tennessee, and I was headed that direction, and Bob may not remember this, but the last game that Bob Johnson played at Neyland Stadium as a prospect and going through the locker room after the game and meeting some of the guys, and Coach Trail said, Bob, give this prospect your jersey. And he gave me the number 50. I still have it today as one of my prized possessions because, the captain of the football team and all that he meant and you guys meant to us coming up. As we had to, in Winchester, you had to go to the highest point on the hill to hear the radio, but always following Tennessee football, and that was really what got me over the hump. That Bob Johnson thought enough of me, and he didn't know my name either, but thought enough of me to give me his jersey.
We all know your name now. Good thing to know.
Hey, Bob, to go back to the UCLA game, and I agree with Johnny. I think that was a defining moment in our whole program. I was blessed enough to get drafted by Detroit, and UCLA at that time was the hottest thing on the West Coast. They wound up playing Michigan State, I think, in the Rose Bowl or something. And I played with Mel Farr was on that UCLA team, and we were drafted together up in Detroit. And we used to talk about that game all the time. And I said, and of course, growing up in the Big Ten and all that, I wanted to know what the difference in the two teams were. And he said, Paul, he said, Michigan State, he said, one guy would hit you, and he could just, really just shake you. He said, but that never happened at Tennessee. We always had, he said, when we played Tennessee, we always had 2 or 3 helmets hitting you at the same time. And he said, that was the biggest thing. He said, you just didn't get away with one hard shot. You were always hit with 3 or 4 guys. He told me one time during the game, and I don't remember when it was, but Vince Gibson always taught us to lead with our heads. He said he had ran, he got tripped up, he fell down, he was getting up to go back to the huddle, and I think it was Jerry Smith or somebody went in there head first, whoop, and he said when he hit that ground, he said he left a hole in the ground. He said, I was walking back to the huddle.
Well, that game was an interesting game, and right at the last of the game, John broke his arm. He caught about 11 passes. On the last pass, he goes out of bounds, he breaks his arm. So we got him all in a sling. You have the normal guys after a game that have been nicked and banged, and there's some bloody towels and whatever around the dressing room like you have. But after the game, on the last play of the game, UCLA throws a pass, and Bobby Petrello intercepts the pass. Our safety man, he threw this long bomb. And he's running down the sideline, coming back with the ball. Instead of getting on the ground, he's looking over at the field to see who's going to hit him. And a guy on the UCLA team stepped off the bench and hit Petrello right above the eyes with his forearm and decked him, knocked him cold as a cucumber. As the 12th man on the field came on, and the officials got the game off, and Petrello's got his head split open down here. And we go in the dressing room, and it is the worst scene I've seen since the First World War. It looked like of some sort.
Coach. That was a great fight.
I mean, it is unbelievable that all the guys broke into it. We had won the game, so nobody cared about all those other things. But it was Bobby had 2 black eyes. A month later, when we played in the bowl game, he had 2 black eyes from that game.
That of course, is a memorable game, and that was my senior year in the last regular season game. And, of course, we, as defensive players, were frustrated and so forth. It was an exciting game to watch, but up to that point, we'd only given up 64 points in 10 games, and we ended up giving up 34 in that game. It was 37-34 was the final, but it was a heck of a football game with a quick story that most everybody will appreciate because they know this guy. During that football game, so many things were happening, and the linebackers and the quarterbacks that weren't playing sat in a table here, and they had phones to the coaches upstairs, and you talked to them. So Dewey Warren was a backup quarterback to Charlie Fulton in that game. And, of course, the defense was off the field, and I'm sitting here, and Dewey's over there, and the phones are there, and we're talking on the phones to the coaches upstairs. And Charlie Fulton, during the course of the game, late in the game, and as I said, anybody knows anything about that game or can recall the action, it was an exciting game to say the least. A lot of things going on. So Charlie got nicked up. I don't know, his ankle or something, so he has to come out. And, of course, Dewey's sitting there, and we're talking, and Dewey's talking on the phone, and Coach Dickey yells for Dewey to get in the game. Dewey, get in the game. So Dewey jumps up and goes flying out there, and he's almost all the way to the huddle, and he doesn't have a helmet. So trying to grab his helmet and throw it out there to him. But that was certainly a memorable game as far as I think Tennessee football was concerned.
There have been 6 national championship teams at Tennessee. A lot of near misses too. Haywood Harris, longtime sports information director, has just written a book about those 6 championship teams.
Along with Gus Manning, my co-author, I might mention. But Bob, we had championship teams in 1938, 1940, 1950, 51, 67, Coach Dickey's team, and then 98, Coach Fulmer's team. All national championship teams. And 4 of those were under Coach Bob Neyland. And really, Bob, what I think about a lot of times is how lucky we as fans at the University of Tennessee, and these guys all qualified, of course, as great players or coaches, how lucky we all have been that the Army decided to send Bob Neyland for his ROTC work to the University of Tennessee instead of someplace like University of North Dakota. They'd have Neyland Stadium up in Great Falls or somewhere if they had done it that way. But he got things going, and that's why we were able to, at the University of Tennessee, to attract people like all these people to come and play for the Tennessee Vols.
Now explain it. It's not most of it, like in '98 it was unanimous, but some of these other teams it might have been one poll or a different poll that recognized it.
The NCAA recognizes a whole bunch of polls that choose national champions at the end of the year. The AP has gotten the most fame over the years, and it in 1951 and 1998 also gave the award to Tennessee. But there were other polls that were really very well respected that just didn't have the publicity that those polls had that put the Vols in there those other years. And the biggest mystery of all, though, is why the 39 team wasn't listed as a national champion. This was, in that era, they were picked before the bowl games. That team in 39 did lose its bowl game, but they had gone through the entire season not only undefeated and untied, but they went unscored on. So I'd like to know what Texas Christian with Jar and John Kimbrough had that put them ahead of Tennessee. They must have had a heck of a ball club.
Tennessee had a heck of a team in '98 when they won the national championship. Coach, former 13-0 season. It was a magical run, wasn't it?
Bobby, it really was a magical run. A couple of these guys can speak on it, but obviously we started the season not very highly ranked, actually. We'd lost a lot of great players off the '97 Orange Bowl team with Peyton Manning and Leonard Little and Terry Fair and Bill Duff and all these guys. I think there was a total of 14 guys that had gone on to the NFL that year, and we had a youthful quarterback, that hadn't played, and T. Martin. And not a lot of people expected a lot from our Tennessee football team, but as it happened, and we just continued to get better during the year and won a close game early with Florida, a big game because they could have been the national champion had they won that football game, and it had gotten that big when we played those guys. And fortunate a little bit along the way to get a win over a good Arkansas team right at the end of the game, and had the wherewithal to finish the season in grand style. And I guess the highlight of at least my athletic career was that opportunity to go and with the team and play Florida State, and Coach Bowden, somebody that I'd admired, so much, and win. But it was a great group of kids, a group of young men that came together to get it done, along with outstanding play by our quarterback.
T, what do you remember about '98? You still think about it all the time?
I think about it all the time, but I think my fondest memory is not even the season. It's in preparation for the season in the spring and coming to training camp. I remember Coach Foreman coming to us with Peyton and all those guys leaving, saying, "Guys, we got to prepare like we're a 6-5 team." And we're looking at each other like, what is he talking about? Because we thought we were way better, but it let us know that we had to prove it to the coaches. And it was in grand style. We had to get dirty again. I mean, with Peyton and those guys, we were kind of spoiled because they were veteran guys. They had been there for years, and Marcus Nash, Joey Kent, good players. And so we didn't have any respect from the coaches yet. In the spring, we were just banging again. And I remember having some scrimmages, and they were ugly. And, I called home to my mom. She's like, "How was the scrimmage?" It's like, it was kind of ugly. But I didn't know if that was good or bad yet, because in one hand you're saying it could be a good defense and a bad offense, or good offense, bad defense, or just two good sides of the ball. And so as the season went on, I was nervous, playing against Syracuse and Donovan McNabb, and kind of started the game off a lot of incompletions. And we go on through the game, and at halftime getting IVs and all this stuff. And I just remember looking at the guys in the locker room like, I can't let these guys down. Going back to the spring, going back to camp, knowing what we had in Jamal Lewis at running back, and you sit Jamal Lewis down and Travis Henry comes into the game, and Peerless wanting to get the ball every play, thinking he's open with four guys around him. Trying to manage that, and we had a system where sometimes our coach would call a pass and I go to run, I call a run, we go to pass, and it was we had an unselfish team with Sean Bryson being a tailback and having to go to fullback and blocking when he could have easily been a running back running a 4.3 40. And Jamal Lewis and Travis splitting time every once in a while, and Peerless wanted to get the ball, and Cedric Wilson wanted to prove himself. It was room for competition. I think that's what made us good. And it's going back to halftime of the Georgia game. I wasn't playing very well, and Jamal had been hurt, and I had Jamal's number on my wristband, and I was kind of down on myself a little bit. I look at my wristband, see the number 31 on my wristband. I'm like, man, with him gone, I gotta step up. And the defense stepped up and put some pressure on Quincy Carter. We got the ball, and that just gave me the attitude of what the rest of the season would be like. And like Coach talked about earlier, the Arkansas game with Billy Ratliff. We had went 4th down, 4th and 10, threw a pass to Peerless, was knocked down, and could have easily been over. But walking off the field, Billy Ratliff kind of touched me on the shoulders like, "Hey, we're going to get the ball back." And I could have easily been like, "Man, forget it, go over there and take my shoulder pads off." But for some reason, I didn't unbuckle my shoulder pads, kept my helmet on, just kind of sat there. And And we all know what happened. Fumbled the ball, he jumped on it, we got the ball back and didn't put the ball in the air one time. And that let us know that what Coach felt would take us to the championship game. And it was the running game. And we just pounded those guys. And everyone thinks that we got the fumble and we were in the end zone. No, we still had about 40 yards to go to score a touchdown. And it was just pounding. And I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Darlin, where were you on the fumble? Were you on the field?
Yeah, I was actually, Billy and I collapsed the pocket. And I don't even remember how he fumbled it, actually. Coach, I don't know if you remember.
He tripped.
He stumbled.
Knocked the center back into the quarterback's foot. He tripped
right.
over his foot. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was Billy or I, but we both collapsed the pocket and caused him to trip. He fumbled. Billy got the ball. And I just remember thinking, thank God, you know. But I mean, I've got some. I mean, I was sitting here listening to T talk about playing Syracuse. Donovan has reminded me constantly about that game. He still says that the pass interference call was not.
I get that all the time too.
He still thinks they should have won that game, but that was a close game, and I felt that was a game that we went into and we thought, you know, we're Tennessee, they're Syracuse, we're supposed to win, and it didn't happen that way. They came out, played hard, and they gave us a good game. But that whole season, just as a whole, I mean, I was telling my girlfriend the other day, I hadn't worn this ring in 3 years because I don't wear a lot of jewelry. And I'm always afraid that I may lose it if I wear it. So I just keep it in a safe place. And but just putting this thing on, putting this thing on, I mean, I hadn't worn it in about 2 years, probably 2 or 3 years, and it's so special to me. You know, it's so special to me as you know, just to go back and think about that ultimate, you know, goal of winning the championship. I mean, that's my most special moment as a college football player for sure.
You know, every team has its personality, certainly, but and you guys talking about defense a bit ago, I don't know that we've ever had a greater leader as a personality than Al Wilson was, you know, for that football team, whether it was on the practice field or whether it was in the locker room or just in the dorm or around. He was constantly reminding everybody, you know, what we were about and what we were here, and we had some great leadership from all over our football team and obviously some very talented players. I guess these guys remember the stick story, you know, with everything. Fact is, it's on our ring because the seniors asked to put it on the ring. But my wife and I like to hike some, and I had a great friend who just recently passed, and Tom Ogle in Gatlinburg, and he actually sent me a walking stick, you know, to hike with, and it was right before practice. This youngster brought it up to me, and so I took it out to practice with me, and I'm out there showing it to some of the guys. I think it's a nice-looking carved stick. You know, it's really very nice. And they said, "Coach, you look like Moses." You know, and, you know, I'm thinking Moses, old, gray-haired, bent-over guy. You know, so we got things going pretty good. So I said, "Take the stick back inside. And we'll forget about it." But that night it hit me. I said, Moses led the people to the Promised Land. And so there's an opportunity here. So the next day, the guys came in for the team meeting. Instead of the rows like they always, and everybody goes to their normal seat, I had put it in a circle. The captain's in the middle, and the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. And I said, "Oh, you guys had some fun with me yesterday. You called me Moses. Moses led the people to the Promised Land, and I'm telling you guys right now that we are going to win the national championship, and I'm going to lead you guys to the Promised Land." You know, I'm thinking, how corny is this, and are they going to buy it? You know, and they bought it. You know, and you could feel the emotion in that room. And I said, this walking stick that was given to me is going to be the center of our energy, and it's going to be our synergy stick. And I gave it to Al. I said, "Al, you keep it today with the linebackers. Guys, you can't tell anybody. You can't tell the media, your parents, your girlfriend. This is us. But every time you see the stick, you think of this meeting and that we're going to win the national championship." And you know, those guys, we didn't tell a soul about that. And it was the first thing on the airplane, the first thing off the bus when we got to the stadium, and they passed it around to different positions. And I still think that was one of the things that brought us together, that synergy stick at that particular time. It's amazing, you know, how you can focus on one thing and it helps you.
Will, you were kind of a young pup on that team. Did you learn a lot from these guys?
Yeah, I learned a lot of things from those guys, from the initiation part of the team. And
you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that was the old where Coach Fulmer and all the coaches were in on it too. And like close to the last day of 2 days, all the seniors and juniors and sophomores, he goes, all right, guys, y'all go in. Freshmen stay here. And so we're all staying there. And we kind of heard rumors, about what was coming. And then, he's just sitting there and he's talking about nothing. I mean, he's just like, well, how are y'all doing? Y'all feeling good? Y'all okay? And, it turns out in the locker room they have the big tubs and they put more ice in those things. And, it's been 90 degrees outside. And they have those things iced down and people are chanting and beating on the walls. I mean, you're sitting there as a freshman, you're like, oh, man, we're about to have to go all out at each other. We're about to have to get the biggest fight. And they just strip you down. And, I mean, you see Al Wilson in there, and he's looking at you, staring at you. And he picked me up and just threw me as far as he could into that water. And about the time you pop up and you can't breathe, somebody takes your head, dunks it right back down one more time. So, I learned all those things from those good quality experiences.
Pass it on to me.
Yeah, and then I pass it on to the next group, exactly. But
Bob, let me tell you one thing about that championship game that all of us have benefited from the Tennessee fans over the years, and that we've had great moments of fan support that people have remembered about this moment or that of it. But I think one of the great tributes I think we could pay to the Tennessee fans was the last mile riding into the stadium at Phoenix, Arizona. I've been around a lot of Tennessee moments over 25 years of being involved with it, but that last mile might have been the most inspirational mile that has ever been traveled by a Tennessee football team to its fans. That was absolutely a solid orange parade going through down there of people, and they couldn't get any depth, so they were lined up along the road going in. And I don't think a Tennessee football team ever went to a locker room taking the walk or whatever else has happened at a more defining moment of inspiration than that. And the Tennessee fans that were there, I hope every one of them buys this thing, because that was I want to give them a tribute in the best way I can for their participation of being there, and I hope it was meaningful to all the players, because I happened to be along for the ride, so to speak, at that moment.
Coach, that's a lot like that 1985 Sugar Bowl victory when we came back from New Orleans. I've never seen the Tennessee fans any more keyed up than they were over that ball game, before the game and after the ball game. And what really got to me was riding in from the airport. They wouldn't let the fans come out to the airport back in those days. I guess they still don't. But here were cars lined up all the way in Alcoa Highway to the dormitory. That's right. People just parked and just getting out there and waving. And I think Gus and I and the kicker were the only ones on one bus, and they were waving at us like crazy. That was our 15 minutes of glory. That was a 15-minute ride in from the airport. But that was
the
tremendous.
championship seasons are great, and everyone remembers that festival game. But, Coach, I guess the 85 Sugar Bowl game is right up there among the favorite games. What do you remember about running out in the field that night in the Superdome?
Well, there were a tremendous amount of fans all over town, of course, during the entire week of preparation. And that football team had come so far and overcame considerable adversity. The greatest talent probably that I've ever had at quarterback was Tony Robinson, not a guy named Tony Robinson. And we signed 7 quarterbacks that year. And the last one to sign was Tony. And we'd signed 6 already. We needed some linemen very badly in that recruiting year. And he had to sweat it down to the last few minutes in the last day or two. And 2 days before the signing date, I called Tony's coach, a great talent, and I said, we're not going to be able to offer Tony a scholarship. We've already got to have these 6 signed, and I should say committed. He said, Coach, you know what you're saying? I said, yes, I do. Okay, I'll move on now. Tony came, and we signed Charles Davis, Chris White, Tommy Sims, and Terry Brown, all of whom ended up starting in the secondary. They were all quarterbacks. In fact, when they saw him passing the first day, Charles Davis, who was a wonderful athlete and a terrific young man, came to me the second day of practice, and he didn't throw the ball real well, but he was a real wonderful athlete, running and smart.
says, Coach, could I be moved to safety man? I said, sure, certainly. So I wasn't going to sign Tony because I thought we needed a lineman worse. And I took a trip to Nashville that night to do some recruiting. I called my brother Joe, who was a quarterback at Florida State. And I said, Joe, I said, here, I'm in a heck of a position. I said, this is the best talent I've ever seen at quarterback. And he says, John, tell me one thing. When have you ever had too many quarterbacks? I says, never. So I signed Tony Robinson. Then, an interesting story, Tony gets hurt against Alabama. When he took control of a game, nobody could take control of a game like Tony Robinson could. I mean, he took over against UCLA, and we were running around the game, and they came back into the game and tied it 1-for-2 twice late in the game. But the Auburn game, he'd missed most of the year before. He says, before the game, he says, Coach, don't be worrying today. He says, I'm going to make certain we win this game. And he took charge, and Auburn was #1 in the country. He gets hurt against Alabama. A guy by the name of Daryl Dickey comes off the bench. Tony gets hurt. He got his ankle sprained in the first quarter, I believe it was, wasn't it, Daryl? First quarter. Daryl comes in, and the first play, he checks off to the quick game, the little short pass we have. And the linebacker from Alabama, I guess he guessed on the play right, came underneath the throw and hit him right in the chest, and I'm looking down the sideline. All he's got is a clear shot to the goal line. He dropped it. From that time on, Daryl Dickey just kept getting better and better and better. We hung on. Daryl Jones made a fabulous interception in the fourth quarter, one of the great plays in Tennessee history. Jumps up and tips Shula's pass, catches it, and he goes to the knees on the ground, stops a drive, a very critical drive. And in the next game, Georgia Tech, we were having a tough struggle. They had a great defense. They were leading 6-3, and Daryl Dickey, in his first start, leads the team downfield. We'd run out of timeouts. We had no timeouts. We had the quick huddle offense. He drove us downfield, makes 2 or 3 critical third down passes, and Swanson caught a low pass to set us up on a field goal. And Reveiz kicks a field goal in the last few seconds, 51 yards, and tied the game. That turned our season around. And the story about Daryl and leadership of Dale Jones, one of the great leaders of all time. And nobody ever played at this school, ever loved a school more than Dale Jones loved Tennessee. But that was a great group of young men overcoming adversity. We lost Keith Davis for a period of time. Jeff Powell comes in as a walk-on, turned into a scholarship player from a track team, and ends up being also one of the stars of the Sugar Bowl. That Daryl won the most valuable player. But the crowd was a big factor. I'd say that we had 75 to 80% of the crowd there. And that was a major factor in the ball game. They had a difficult time with their audibles. They had the first drive for the touchdown. We stopped them, and they faked a punt, made a first down, and went in and scored 7-0. And probably summing it up, closing, I'd say that one of the biggest shocks of my life, that we beat Miami that badly. And that's another tribute to the crowd. But the young men like these guys overcame adversity, had great leadership. We came much farther than I ever thought we'd ever come. And that was one of the great victories and one of the great ball games I've ever been involved with in my entire life.
I quoted the newspaper, quoted a Miami fan. They interviewed him. He said, when did you think you'd be outnumbered by the fans in New Orleans? He said, when I passed Mobile.
Darryl, let's go back. Talk about when you...
I've had many people say, Coach, when I have a bad day, said I just put the Sugar Bowl tip. I said I go home. If I'm having a bad day at the office, I go home. I close the doors, put the Sugar Bowl tape on, and said I feel a lot better. So people said that for years.
Darryl, time when you were out on the field against Alabama, Tony just got hurt. What was going through your mind?
Well, in Coach Major's story, that was early in the game. Tony sprained an ankle and limped off the field, and they sent me in there one time for one play, and I was following the game plan. If they do this, you need to do that. So I did, and sure enough, the Alabama guy read it, and like Coach said, I hit him square in the chest with the ball, and he dropped it. Had he caught that ball, I'd have never played another down at Tennessee. I'm convinced of that. Well, in the fourth quarter is the first play of the first quarter that Tony got hurt. And I remember that game as one of the defining moments in your life that you never forget. I hadn't played much. I started one game as a junior against Army. But going in that game against Alabama, I think we were we were down 14-13 in the fourth quarter, and we were going into their end zone when Tony got hurt, and we handed the ball off a couple times, and then we kicked the field goal to go up 16-14, which was, I think, the final score in that ball game. But had to go back in. Of course, we got a couple more series of downs for offense, and I remember to this day going out there, and they called a simple pass for me out there on a particular down early when I had been out there playing, and just a 5-step drop with simple button hooks on the outside and a high-low read. I took the snap, and I took 5 steps as fast as I could go. And I remember that those guys on Alabama's defense were already behind me. The speed of that game, the Alabama-Tennessee football game in the fourth quarter of a tight game, was incredible. And until you have been on that field, and all these guys have been in that arena, you can't understand how fast that game is being played. And I'd been watching it for 4.5 years on the sideline. Finally, I got my chance to be out there, and it was incredible. And on that particular play, I didn't try to find my wideout. I found a piece of green grass out there, and I threw that ball as hard as I could in that green grass just to get rid of it until I could get caught up with the speed of the game. But that was an incredible moment for me. And you talk about the Sugar Bowl, and like Coach said, and paying tribute to the Tennessee fans, that was an incredible night, not only for our team and individuals, but also for our fans. That was a magical atmosphere. Once we got it rolling there in the Sugar Bowl, I mean, once the pitch got up in that Superdome, it never came down. And it was an incredible atmosphere and a great experience to be a part of.
Darrell, in your wildest dreams when you came to Tennessee, could you ever envision yourself being the MVP of the Sugar Bowl?
No, I never did. And when you look back on it, to play at the University of Tennessee and to play in the SEC, I mean, that's about as far as you can go. Because at the time, the Sugar Bowl went to the champion of the Southeastern Conference, which we became champions, and we went to the Sugar Bowl, and then to get the highest honor in the Sugar Bowl was something that obviously is a great thing to me. But no, it didn't. I was there for a long time. I remember the first time I was a freshman at University of Tennessee in 1980. Coach Fulmer was running a drill.
I was hoping this would go through without
Jimmy Noonan.
End of my career.
Yeah, I would have never played it down in the Sugar Bowl had this not happened. Jimmy Noonan was nose guard at the time. Jimmy Noonan was about 5'9" and about 275 and was all muscle. And Coach Fulmer was running a blocking drill where he got a lineman blocking the defensive guy, and he got ball carriers back here, and you're going to run, make a cut, and get through the drill. Well, he set the drill up, and all us young freshmen are standing back here. We're going to be the ball carriers, and he set it up, and all the linemen are up there chanting for the offensive, chanting for the defense. And he said, okay, give me a ball carrier up here. And everybody kind of took 2 steps back. And I'm left standing there, and all of a sudden he throws me the ball, says, you run it, Dickie. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So he said hike and took off in there, and I thought I'd done a good job, lowered my pads and got down there. Well, Jimmy Noonan hit me up under my ribs and lifted me up, and we were kind of struggling going around, and by that time I heard the whistle blow, and I thought the drill was over, so I relaxed. Well, that's the worst thing he could have done against Jimmy Noonan, because he collapsed me on the ground and ended up breaking my leg, broke my ankle on that play right there. So I sat out my freshman year, re-signed the next year, and ended up getting a 6-year out of it. So interesting story about coming to Tennessee.
Darrell may be the only 6-year man in Tennessee history, maybe, Darrell. Darrell also tells you about my judgment that we even tried that. We had Robinson and Francis and some other quarterbacks. And Darrell led his team to the state championship in Colorado, and we were very impressed with him. But we tried Darrell at safety man. Darrell never uttered a word about the dispute or discussing it. He said, Coach, wherever you want to put me, I'll play. So his team attitude and his leadership and stick to it, and it's paid off for him and for us.
Dale, what about you? I guess everybody remembers the Alabama play. It's on a lot of screensavers around the country now. What do you remember about it?
Well, I think it was an opportunity. At late in the game, we knew we had to make a big play. It's kind of different because for me, I grew up in Tennessee, watched many of these guys play, and it's so weird because I played that play, not that particular play, but I made plays against Alabama over and over and over. And the play started. I mean, before it even started, I knew it. I knew the play. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to play this play? You can see me on the film if you watch it. I rush out, I rush in, I don't know. I just know I'm going to catch that pass. Weirdest thing ever. And, it was big for us, winning championships, I think the first time in 20 years. I think the biggest thing, though, goes back to the Florida game we lost. There's always, you don't really learn unless from a loss is the only time I think you really learned. Because when you're winning, you're out there, things are going good, you don't know you don't correct things, but when you lose, it makes a difference. And in the Florida game, we go down there, it's about 120, unbelievable. We lose that game, we get in the locker room, and it's kind of like those guys over there. We build something at that time. Coach says, he says it was one of the talented teams he had. Well, he wasn't talking about the defense because we were misfits. We had some great guys that loved to play for Tennessee, and we came together as a team. And I think that was, of all the things I remember at Tennessee, it's when it was through the loss of Florida, and it brought us together as a team.
What do you guys remember about New Orleans? Bourbon Street was wild, wasn't it, with Tennessee fans?
It was, and it goes right back to what we were saying earlier about defining moments in Tennessee history, and that was certainly one of them. The festive atmosphere of all the week. Of course, we're not participating in the majority of it, but we get to see it. I remember me and you, Bob, had an interview on a balcony of Bourbon Street a couple days before the game, and the sea of orange that was out
like
there
the Pope going in front of his fans out there.
It was a tremendous atmosphere the whole week, and very festive, and it led up straight to the game, and it continued, during the ball game. I tell you, the other thing that reminds me about that team, and Tennessee has had a lot of great linebackers and has been known for the tremendous wide receivers, Larry Severs and Stanley Morgan, and all the people have been through. But that was the beginning of the linemen, that really started to set the tone for the offensive linemen that played there. We had a great offensive line that played there with Bruce Wilkinson and Harry Galbraith and Douglas and Darrell Smith. And that's one of the times that we really had a dominant offensive line that did some great things offensively because of that.
Bob, one thing, and a darn good receiver in Tim McGee and Swanson. Dale Jones is from a family of 13 children, and his mother basically raised that family by working, and I remember seeing her at most of the games, probably all the home games, but of all the people I've been around in my coaching career and playing, I don't think there's ever been a more inspirational player than Dale. He wasn't a showboat, but he had that natural exuberance. When he made a play, trapped a pass for a loss, he jumped up, and he really got the fans into it. And he is one of the true blue football players that made himself a great player because he wanted to do it so badly.
We talk about defining moments. I think one of the defining moments, too, is when Tennessee got a quarterback by the name of Condridge Holloway, broke the color. We talked about Lester a little bit. Condridge also had to step in. The first black quarterback in the Southeastern Conference. Would have gone to Alabama maybe, but Bear Bryant said Alabama wasn't ready for a black quarterback. He had a chance to go play baseball. Why'd you wind up in Tennessee, Condridge?
Dorothy.
Yeah, my mother got a better scholarship than I did. I think I wound up at Tennessee because of Bill Battle. I mean, Coach just was honest with me. Well, between Coach Battle, between Ray Trail, and Jim Wright, mostly Ray Trail and Coach Battle, it was a real recruiting type of deal. And really, everybody said Alabama was in the picture. They were, because I lived in the state of Alabama. Auburn was probably more of a possibility, but baseball was the real kicker. If it had been up to me, I would have played baseball, Bob. But, it didn't happen. But Coach Battle gave me an opportunity, and that's all I wanted. And he looked me in the eye and said, hey, if you can play quarterback, then you can play quarterback. We're going to play the best person. But listening to Darrell, I had a Darrell moment. You're talking about one of those moments, if you don't make the play, you probably won't play again. It's my first game against Georgia Tech. And it was a little three-step drop, little out pass to the field. Well, freshman thinks he can make that throw. The ball gets tipped, defensive back intercepts it. My first thought, if I don't catch him, I ain't ever playing again. So, luckily I did catch him, and I remember Ray Nettles saying, Peanut, we'll hold him. They scored a field goal, and I think the score ended up 31-3. So, but that was one of those moments you kind of remember all the time. But coming to Tennessee was with a great group of folks. I mean, we didn't have I think our superstar was when we got Stanley, and that was what the second-year freshman could play. But we were all just kind of a bunch of guys that wouldn't give up on each other. They named us the comeback kids one year, and we had a lot of things going. But back then, a lot of freshmen used to come in the summer, and I was one of those guys. So I bonded with all these guys when I was a 17-year-old freshman in there in the summer. And, of course, it changed a little bit. I was a little bit homesick, but when you're around Claude Symington and some of those other guys, it's entertaining. I mean, I didn't want to go home. I was getting a show, man. But, you bonded and you got to where you believed in everybody. And I just think that team, the way we went about things that first year was really special. And one thing I'd like to say about that, too, I know we can't do it now because of the way things are set up, but having that freshman team, not being able to play that first year, was big because I wouldn't say that I was totally ready to go that sophomore year and play, but being on that freshman team and having that experience of playing those games with a team, with our freshmen, prepared me for being able to step in there and
it's funny to hear Conrad say that because I've told a lot of people, and this is not to take anything away from the 5 quarterbacks we played with my senior year, tell you how good we were on offense. It was the offensive defense was the name of our highlight film that particular year. But if Conrad had been able to play as a freshman, I think we would have definitely made a run at the national championship because we had a good team around him. And Jim Maxwell came in and finished the season, did a great job. But I've told a lot of people that even though he was a freshman, he was so talented throwing and running the football that I really believe we would have made a run at it.
Yeah, I was on the defense that year as a senior, and Conrad was a freshman. And I remember we were playing Alabama down there in Birmingham, and it was like about 115 degrees on that tartan turf. And unfortunately, our offense turned the ball over about 6 times that day or whatever. And the only time I can ever recall being somewhat negative from the standpoint of hollering at the offense about midway through the third quarter. We made Alabama fumble the ball, and our offense had been sputtering, on and off all day long. And it's the first time I ever said anything. And I said, how about offense? How about holding on the ball and give us a rest? Because, it was hot, and I've told this over the years that I would have given anything if Conrad would have been eligible, or they would have let freshmen play back then. Even like Philip says, the 5 quarterbacks that were there were fine guys and ended up doing a really good job. But with a talent like Conrad had, we would have had a heck of a run at the national championship.
In fact, the defense that year had to score a lot of touchdowns. You guys ran punts back and intercepted passes and ran them back.
Well, the defense. Our junior and senior year set an NCAA record for 57 turnovers or something like that. We tied the NCAA record our junior year for 36 interceptions. But I'll never forget our senior year playing in Memphis, Mississippi State. We were backed up and it was 4th down, and I went in to punt, and I was going to be a real heroic, and I pulled a fake punt and slipped and didn't make it. So the next time we got ready to punt, Coach Ballard came over there and grabbed me by the shirt. He said, "This time you kick the damn ball." I said, "Yes, sir." No doubt I'm going to kick it.
Speaking of punts, and I know Coach Battle won't tell this story, but, you always come up and you have defining moments, and I was there for him, and all of us were there for him. But when we were, the Georgia game comes up, and, we got a fake punt called, and it didn't work. But what Coach Battle will not tell you is that the play, he did call the play, and it was called, but the play got checked out of. And instead of giving up a player that didn't get the check, he took the brunt for it, and he let it go. And that's why I came to Tennessee.
Great story. He called to play. That was the problem.
Coach, talk about Condredge, your relationship with Condredge.
Well, Condredge was, Ray Trail kept telling me what a great player Condredge Holloway was. And I said, how big is he? And he said, well, he ain't very big. Well, my hero at West End High School in Birmingham was a guy named Keith Wilson. And he was Condredge's coach. And I never will forget, I'm a kid in grade school out there in Birmingham, Alabama, and watching two-a-day practices. And well, it's before two-a-days. It's players out there working on their own. And Keith Wilson's out there. He's a little running back, and he's sweating. And he comes over by us, and somebody says, why are you working so hard? There ain't even coaches out here. And he said, there's no shortcut to success. And that was always... I mean, I believed that forever and forever. And so I called Keith and I said, how good is this guy? He says, Coach, he can play. I promise you he can play. And so it wasn't any problem to me. If he could play quarterback, he could play quarterback because, you know, we signed Albert Davis and we decided Tennessee was ready for integration. That wasn't a problem. And Albert couldn't get in, but Lester came and was a great first player, he was a great player. He was a great person. So what color didn't make any difference. And so I didn't think that was a problem at Tennessee. It may have been a problem in Alabama or Georgia, but I didn't think that was a problem. And particularly when we went through the year in 71, and if Coach Dickey hadn't screwed up Bobby Scott's, put him in late in the season where he had one more year, we might have won. And if freshmen were eligible. So Condredge comes in, and it's obvious he can play. And it was obvious to the Tennessee fans because we had struggled around so bad. We were in fall practice, and our guys were having a hard time. We were practicing up on the Upper Hudson, and there wasn't a fence over there by that big bank that went down in the road over there toward the west. And we'd be working on a passing game before practice, and you know, they'd throw them over their heads, and managers have to go down the hill. And so finally, they got so tired of it, one manager said, I ain't going down there again. It's your time this time. So we were struggling around badly on offense, and we're playing Notre Dame's freshmen. And was it Hanratty? Who was the quarterback?
Tom Clements.
Clements. And so they play on an open date week. And freshman games, nobody ever cared or worried about freshman games. We're playing Notre Dame's freshmen in Knoxville on our open date, and 31,000 people come out and watch the game. But Condredge was a guy that was always said and did the right thing, and he'd die for you on the practice field or on the playing field. He'd come out and he'd be hurting and in pain, and he'd go back, and the players loved him, and the players respected him, and of course all the coaches loved and respected him, and you know, he had when he was healthy, he got hurt in that UCLA game in his senior year in the opening game, and I was telling that story last night, and it's a great story. We were when Condredge was in there, we were ahead 10-0, and he got his shoulder separated, or Mickey told me he had his shoulder separated, and he's out for the season. That's what he told me. So, you know, you like Mickey O'Brien always said the general said, somebody gets hurt, you close ranks, and everybody else takes up the slack. And so I've taken Condredge, he's out of my mind forever for the rest of this season because he's gone. So we're out there with our junior college quarterback that Jimmy Wright thought was going to be a great player, and God, we were floundering around and really doing bad. And so it's now the fourth quarter, and we're behind 17-10. Dick Vermeil's coaching at UCLA, and so all of a sudden there's a play down in the south end zone or down in that end of the field, and somebody makes 2 yards, but the whole crowd just stood up and started cheering, and I thought, dang, Alabama must be getting beaten. They're listening to it on the radio or something. I couldn't imagine what they were cheering about. Well, Condredge comes running up to me and grabs me and shakes me and says, I'm okay. You can put me in. And I didn't even know he'd been to the hospital. I thought he'd back here just tired of seeing us wallering around and came up here and was going to play hurt. And I said, well, tell the trainer to tell me that you can go back in. I looked down there. Mickey said, send him. I said, well, get your ass out there. So he goes in, takes us down, runs his the play that he got made famous, sprinted out, runner pass, and takes off running and leaps about the 5-yard line. And the linebacker came around, hit him, and he flipped him and landed on his back in the end zone. Well, he had a bad look on his face when he was getting up, and now it's 17-16, and he's my 2-point man, and there's 2 minutes left to go in the game, but he's limping and hurting, and so we kick it and hope we're going to get it back, and we don't get it back. But he had tore his cartilage in his knee, so he's got a separated shoulder in his right arm. He can't throw. He's quick, and he's got a torn cartilage in his leg. He can't run, and so he don't play the next week, but we go to Auburn the next week. Now, we just beat Auburn 21-0 the year before and made Coach Jordan mad because it was raining, and we punted on first down because we didn't want the ball, and you couldn't do anything with the ball. And so I was telling him, I don't know if y'all have seen the movie El Cid, the guy, the old European hero, and the Spanish conquistadors or whoever it was. There were good guys and bad guys, and El Cid was a good guy. And so he got a spear stuck through him the day before the big battle, and the bad guy said, El Cid's dead. And so he go back in, and sure enough, in the castle, he dies. But they put his armor on the next day, strap him up there on that horse, and run him out there, and the bad guys run off, and the good guys win. So Conard really shouldn't have played, but I was thinking about this movie, and I'm telling you. I'd rather have Conard out there handing off than whoever else we had in there. And Auburn didn't run off that day, and we didn't do very good. And the fans pelted us with oranges both times. But in good times and bad, he was a great guy to be around, and he was a guy that probably I feel as close to as my own sons. He would die for you, and he'd die for Tennessee.
Stanley, you were a highly talented wide receiver, I guess, and suddenly you get moved back to tailback. That opens the door for Larry Severs to slide in at wide receiver. I mean, and Conard, this was quite a couple of guys you had to throw to and give the ball to, weren't it?
That was a difficult decision. Stanley was a guy that, you got to understand, I respected all my players, but I had Chip Howard and him in love, and then I get Stanley Morgan. Now, that Chip Howard and Emmett did what they needed to do, and they were great players in our scheme. But now all of a sudden, I had a guy that, when the ball's in the air, there's not anybody faster. I'll even go on that when he played in the NFL. There's some of you guys that played against. He might be even when the ball's in the air and he goes to get it, he's going to leave whoever's there next to him. And that was a weapon that we had, and we tried to get the ball to Stanley as much as we could. So when things started sputtering, I guess the idea was, well, let's just turn around and hand it to him. Well, I knew he didn't like that. Stanley would do whatever you wanted, but he did not like playing tailback. And, of course, maybe I should let him elaborate on that.
But I came out of high school as a running back because we had that T formation, and we didn't throw the ball in high school. So, but I felt, and on a college level, I was too small. I came in, I was about 168, 170 on a good day. So the first year I came in, I played receiver. Felt I had a chance to start, but Coach Battle believed that young guys, we should grow and learn as we age. So the next year we come out, and then Coach Battle comes to me and say, well, Stanley, we're going to put you in the backfield. I'm like, well, if that's what you need to do. But I didn't want to be in the backfield. I just felt I was too small to play running back in the SEC. But Coach Battle thought I could do it. And it probably worked out better for me because it made me tougher. I don't think I would have
played as long as I did in the NFL if I hadn't been in the backfield, because when you're playing running back in the SEC, you're going to get tough or you go home. And it made me tougher. It made me a complete player.
Larry, that opened the door for you. You got a chance to be a two-time All-American because Stanley's playing tailback.
Well, that's right, and I guess that's one of my defining or magical moments, maybe, is but mystical. I tell you what was not magical is I'm a redshirt sophomore. Back then, when you redshirt, it really wasn't a plan. They just figured you weren't good enough, and so here I am, green team, second year in a row. First day of practice, you look over, first punt. Stanley gets it. We've never seen an athlete like this in our life. Here I am, a redshirt wide receiver, and this freshman, it's just something we had never seen. I mean, Stanley was today's player back then. Yeah. And so I'm calling my dad. I said, Dad, I got to get out of here. And he said, hang on through the spring. And in the spring, actually, Stanley broke an elbow, didn't you, that spring? Yeah. And I got a chance to catch a few passes, so I was backing him up. And then when they moved him running back, I came in, and kind of the rest is history.
Larry, you and Condredge teamed up on one of the greatest plays in Tennessee history, the two-point play against Clemson. Set it up for us, Condredge. What was going on?
Well, we actually practiced scramble drill back then. That's something we always did because whenever because we were good at it, but we had a lot of opportunity to scramble. So I'll leave it at that. But anyway,
Condredge would only look once and then scramble.
Yeah. And when your defensive ends are past you going back, that helps you scramble too, doesn't it? But anyway, we always knew that if you reverse the field, your receivers always came with you, and Club would always make sure that he used his big body, and what he'd do was give me enough room to throw it out so he could go get it. And that's basically what happened. We tried to run the same play twice, and not only did they stack outside, they slanted out there that way. And I got out there's two guys outside of me, so I just reversed, and there he was. I mean, I saw the big body and just threw it to the corner. And the only person jumped higher than Larry was Gus. And Gus, you remember that picture, Gus?
Oh, yeah. He's got that $5 bill.
Had the satchel there, and that was a great picture. I don't know if you ever saw that picture, but there's a little kid there crying. He was the head coach's son from Clemson, but that picture is just fantastic. But we always practiced scramble drill. That's something we did every day.
Well, Condredge is downplaying that big time because if you watch the film, I mean, first of all, Condredge starts in the huddle, okay, guys, we got to get this. He turns around to me and says, I'm running the ball. If I don't get in there, you be over there, I'm going to fumble. And you recover the fumble. And so he's thinking way ahead of us. I'm still thinking, how can I get across and make a block? So Condredge, if you look at the film, how he gets this ball off is unbelievable. I mean, he's sideways. He's got people hanging on him. He's already run from two people and throws it in there. I wouldn't even gone the other way, but I heard Condredge scream, Larry. And when I did, I knew what that meant, and I went the other way. And look at the tape on it. Phenomenal play. It may be the best play he ever had.
Yeah, might have been. Eddie, you had to go against him in practice almost every day. What was he like trying to stop him in practice even?
Well, you couldn't stop me when he scrambled, and he'll stand up in any of the games. I remember the Duke game, Georgia Tech, must have broke 10 tackles. We all just sat back in amazement. As defense, you come out of the game, sometimes you're tired. We didn't go sit down because we wanted to watch Condredge. And, but he made plays that you could never dream of. I mean, we were all just in amazement.
Did he make you better going against him in practice?
He made us a lot better. Back then, of course, we were playing, a lot of running teams and wishbone teams, and thank goodness he was here, not at Alabama. We had enough trouble with who they had, but always made you better. When you're playing against a great athlete and a competitive athlete, it's always makes you a lot better.
Incredible, isn't it? To hear about the defining moments of these great Tennessee football legends. Coming up, we'll find out some interesting information about the coaches, like why Coach Caffico was called Bad News Caffico.
Peyton, reflect back a little bit. I'm in the NFL now, and of course, have had some great years with the Colts. But does Tennessee still pop into your mind?
Absolutely. Of course, in the locker room, bragging rights is a big deal as far as whose college is winning and which team's beating who. But I'm very proud to represent the University of Tennessee in the NFL, and I certainly miss college football. Really, my college experience. There's nothing like it, and I feel fortunate to be able to play in the NFL and to keep being able to play a game for a living. But there's nothing like college football, especially in the Southeastern Conference. There's no better place to play quarterback than right here in Knoxville.
Coach, everybody talked about Peyton coming out of high school. Surely he's going to go to Ole Miss and follow his dad's legacy there. Why did you keep recruiting him? Didn't you think he was going to Ole Miss?
You know, it was an interesting scenario at that particular time, and obviously all the ties with Ole Miss and Archie and Olivia and just the family history there. It was a long shot maybe, but Peyton was really, really honest, and Archie was. We had Archie and I had at least a distant relationship at that particular time through Bobby Scott and some friends, and they were not so sure about the situation at that particular time at Ole Miss, and the timing actually turned out to be very much in our favor. Our need for a quarterback, there are uncertainties as to what was going to happen. Peyton was a tremendously high-profile quarterback, and it turned out that it was more Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Michigan, those kind of folks. Much more than Ole Miss, but in the beginning, initially, that was the big concern.
But Peyton, you had to make the decision. I got to turn my back on the Rebels and all that. I mean, that had to be tough for you.
Well, certainly it was a tough decision. I mean, growing up, Bobby and I grew up in New Orleans for many years. I thought Ole Miss was the only school that existed. I mean, those were the pennants that we had in our house, and those were the games that we went to on Saturdays if we were free. And so. But just when I, got to be playing high school football, I remember I always thought I'd just go to Ole Miss. I didn't know I was going to be a college football player until I was a junior, and I got a handwritten letter from Bobby Bowden at Florida State. And that's the first time I said, well, maybe I'll be a, good enough player.
How tall were you at that time?
I was a junior. I was probably 6'3" at the time.
So you just got your growth spurt.
So I hit my growth spurt, and so that kind of told me maybe I'll be good enough to go play college football. So that's kind of when I sort of opened my eyes up to other colleges and realized that, hey, there's some other pretty good places out there. So I took a lot of visits unofficially in the summer, went to Gainesville and Tallahassee and Austin and College Station, but it just sort of opened my eyes up. But I remember Coach Fulmer, one of the big deals was Coach Fulmer was the first head coach ever to come into my house, and that's a big deal when the head coach comes. I mean, that means that's serious
Scary
business.
A little bit?
Well, it's just, I would say it's intimidating, but you just know it's pretty serious because, it's one thing when an assistant coach comes and, they still may not have even offered you at that point. When the head coach comes, I mean, they're coming to offer you a scholarship and put the full court press on you. And he and Coach Cutcliffe and Coach Sanders, they came and triple teamed me that day in New Orleans. But that was, so yeah, it was a tough decision, but it was something about following your mind, but following your heart kind of together. And it just made a lot of sense for me to come here. I had a good visit here. I came in January of '94 during an ice storm. I didn't really get to go a lot of places, but it kind of worked out well because I just met good people. I had a good rapport right away with Coach Fulmer, teammates, other coaches, the students, the teachers. And I just kind of said I could be happy here for 4 years with or without football. And but like Coach Fulmer said, the timing of it too, with Schuler just leaving, and I knew I really wanted just to be able to play as a sophomore. I figured I might redshirt or maybe play a little bit as a mop-up duty, but I wanted to earn that starting job as a sophomore. But everything changed pretty quickly.
Yeah, you had to sell them because you had to get two quarterbacks. So you were recruiting Brandon Stewart too. So you were doing a juggling act.
I didn't really tell him too much about Brandon Stewart or Brandon about him. That came up later. It's interesting on the trip down to see Peyton that he mentioned. It was during, I think, bowl practice, and we took the pilot oil plane and we zipped right into New Orleans, and Archie picked us up, and we had I think a great visit. But Olivia wasn't exactly happy to see us, and she'd been the homecoming queen at Ole Miss, and well, there was a lot of things right there, and the whole conversation went great. And David Cutcliffe did a fantastic job, I think, talking football, and I think I did enough to keep everybody interested in everything. And Olivia asked, well, where is Steve Kiner now? You know, and I, at that point I said, this meeting is over.
Call the plane.
Because, you know, and Steve's wonderful now. He's not, but at the time it was the
Archie
mule, Archie
Who
and the
yeah.
mules and all that business. And we walked out of the house finally, and they were great. We had a great visit. I said, David, I don't think we got a chance there, you know. So yeah, that other quarterback was out there because we might not get this, you know, and it worked out wonderful.
But Peyton, you'd heard the rumors that Brandon was coming. That didn't
Well,
you didn't back off.
yeah,
on that,
I
did you?
knew certainly. You know, like I said, it was such a good opportunity, and there were a lot of quarterbacks interested in Tennessee because that's, you know, as a quarterback, even though you're a competitor, you also want to look for a favorable situation to play, and so it was a very attractive time with Heath Schuler turning pro. So all the top quarterbacks, you know, were hoping to get an offer from Tennessee. So yeah, I was very aware, and like I said, I wasn't trying to lead anybody on. I really didn't. You know, I wanted to take the whole process, let it work. So I took all my visits, and Knoxville was my second to last visit. Went down to Florida after that. But I remember going to Florida, I was saying, let's something happens, I'm probably going to Tennessee, and that's why when I got back from Florida, I committed. You know, on Tuesday right after. I didn't want to. You know, some guys, I can't stand the press conferences with the. You know, they rip open the shirt and put the hat on. You know, because I understand.
Well, you still had yours at the Superdome, though, right?
Actually, I committed in it was in a sports bar. I'm not exactly proud to say that, but it was a good friend of my dad's who owns it. But, you know, I understand how much work these coaches put into recruiting. I mean, you know, calling me all the time. So if I wasn't going to a school, I told them no right away. But, you know, I think Coach Fulmer and Coach Cucker were kind of wanting to know whether they, you know, I said, you know, I was letting them know that I'm very interested, and but I think I surprised them. I remember when I called them and told them I was coming. I think it was a surprise, and probably because I think people just didn't. A lot of people didn't give me a chance to say, "How can you definitely go to Ole Miss?" I think Coach Fulmer saw that I was interested, and he kind of jumped on that interest. But I still think there's probably a little bit of surprise when I did commit. But it just. You know, it just felt right. You know, everybody says, you know, what's the main reason you came to Tennessee? And I said it was just the combination of Coach being here, and you know, I mean, you know, I think if you ever get a recruit to a game here, I think you got them sold here. But I never got to go to a game here in Knoxville. Like I said, I didn't even get to see the stadium. It was covered in snow, and I slipped about 4 times on my visit here. So I just met good people here, and it was just a feeling that I followed. But it was kind of gutsy because, I mean, like you said, my mom, even though she loves me and told me you can go wherever you want to go, I know she wanted me to go to Ole Miss. My dad was the, you know, he truly sat me down and said, son, you go wherever you want to go, and we'll support you. And, you know, and that was gutsy for him to tell me that because he caught a little flack, obviously. But I appreciate them giving me that freedom to make that decision, and best decision I ever made.
Yeah, the first game, I mean, you're thinking maybe I'll be carrying a clipboard or wearing a baseball cap. Jerry Colquitt goes down, 7th play of the game. You're thrust into in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Talk about when you went into the huddle that first time.
Well, it's still one of the most unfortunate, you know, events with Jerry getting injured. Just playing quarterback this many years, it still bothers me because I would like to have seen what kind of year he would have. I know a lot of people would have, and he'd paid his dues, but had a great attitude about it. But yeah, Bob Greasy, Keith Jackson doing the game, Rose Bowl, 90,000 people. I played AA ball in high school. You know, the most we ever had was 1,000. They got there in the 3rd quarter. You know, the girls were all.
And you weren't thinking you were going to get to play?
No, I was just enjoying the whole scene, kind of looking around. You know, looking for good-looking girls up in the stands, and all of a sudden Jerry goes down. Helton goes in, who I don't think had spent a lot of time in the playbook that week. You know, he probably took batting practice that morning. But I just remember we're down about 21 to nothing, I think, and we're ranked 9th. In the country. UCLA's ranked. I mean, we're supposed to beat them fairly soundly, and you know when Jerry goes down, I mean we're out of whack, and then the team is so down. I remember Coach Fulmer comes over and says, "You're going to play today," and you know that was a very powerful statement. I mean, you know, because I'd prepared and I'd studied, but you know you don't really think, you know, you're going to play, you know, in your first game, and. I just looked down, all the hair on my arms was just standing straight up. I remember I'm doing like high knees on the sideline, like sprints. I'm like, what am I doing? I was just so nervous. But anyway, yeah, so we're down, and I go in the huddle. And right then I remember my dad had told me, he said, son, if you ever get in the huddle with the first team at any point this year, in practice, anytime, you know, it's your job to be a leader. Even though you're 18 and Kevin Mays is 22, you got to take control of that huddle, and it's your job as a quarterback. So I remember that advice right as I get in there, you know. So I'm jogging in the huddle. I just said, all right, guys, I know I'm just a freshman, but I can take you down the field right now. get us a touchdown, get us back in this game. All right, let's go. You know, I'm ready for this big rah-rah. And Jason Lehman grabs me by the shoulder and says, "Hey, freshman, shut the blank up and call the blank in play." You know, and I said, "Yes, sir." And you know, I never said another word the rest of the year. But I remember it was such an anticlimactic series. But I remember that was yesterday. First play, 9 yards, a little man. Second one, Mose Phillips stuffed. Third and 1. Total rookie, freshman mistake. I remember Coach Fulmer kind of sitting me down afterwards, but we're getting up there. UCLA is not set at all. And so Kevin Mays is telling me, just snap it, you know, whereas now I would say, no, look, this is my show. I'm going to, I just, get up there and, say, just snap it. Horns not even set. Joey Kent's not even lined up. They stuff little man. And Coach Fulmer comes and goes, what happened? And, I was like, well, Kevin Mays said, just go ahead and snap it. So I snapped it. He went, you don't have you snap it when you want to snap. That's your job as a quarterback, But it was a good, I got a little, I got my feet wet early, and it just kind of helped me the rest of that season.
His preparation it's legendary now. You saw it very early because he came in that summer before his freshman year, so he was really getting pretty prepared to play.
It's just been incredible to watch Peyton's growth, and it was so accelerated because of his effort. And he had the great background with his dad. I mean, we had talked about the times that he had sat into, I guess, in his dad's meetings and in meetings with other quarterbacks there with the Saints and throwing with the pro receivers when he's a junior in high school. And so he'd had some experiences that other guys hadn't had, but it really goes back to his heart, as to his will to prepare to win. And he's like a machine, like a computer. I kidded him at the time. He really was very much like something that could take all this information in and be able to use it at the right time. And you saw that very early. He came there in the summer early for business, and he had himself prepared. He says he didn't know if he would play or not, but in the back of our minds, that was certainly a great possibility for us, for our future. And if there's any one thing that, for my career, and not to take away from any other player, because there's been a lot of great players at everything, but to get us started in the right direction, and those 4 years that he spent here made Tennessee football, at least this era. And so I'm really proud of him and his accomplishments, and most of all his friendship.
On those 3rd and 1s, when you call a timeout, he'd come over to the sideline. Who ran the meeting?
Oh, he knew. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. Now, he didn't always agree with what we decided to do because, we're going to make the first down. He always felt like that was a great time to take a shot or whatever. But he always did what needed to be done to help us win. I remember the quarterback sneak at Georgia. We sneak it up in there, and I'm watching, and I think we've got the first down. And all of a sudden, he's coming back out of there and running around. What is going on? And he throws a touchdown pass, and that's just so typical of.
Well, then the famous bootleg at Alabama, was that a makeup right there?
Well, that was something that I remember Coach Fulmer and Coach Cutcliffe and I, because you remember the history of that Tennessee-Alabama, we'd fumbled twice down there on the goal line the previous 2 years, and so that had
for wins.
Really cost the game, and I guess the one of them was a tie. But I remember Coach Fulmer and Coach Cutcliffe kind of had a little 3-man meeting and just say, hey, look, just on the down low, we get down there again. If they signal, the 2-power where Graham dives over the top, if Randy Sanders points at you, then you keep it. But it was the best way to do it because if you tell anybody else, you're going to keep it. They don't block it the same. And so we talked about it like on probably Tuesday. And sure enough, we get down there, maybe 3rd or 4th series, first down stuff, second down stuff. 3rd and 1, all of a sudden I see the signal, and he kind of does that point. I'm kind of just double checking it. He did point at me, right? 'Cause I'm a sophomore. I'm not quite a senior. I'm still by the book on following orders, and he did point at me. But it's one of my favorite plays, and I got the best picture of it because I kind of bobbled the snap, believe it or not, which kind of helped delay everything and set it. And I fake it. Of course, they all bite, and I just take it around the corner. But the greatest picture is I'm in the corner, and all the referees are looking, because Graham would have scored. They're all looking at Graham, and all of Jason Lehman, all the linemen, they're all signaling touchdown. They don't even know I have the ball. I'm right by the referee. He's looking at Graham, and he's like this. I'm in
all the Alabama guys were looking at that.
I'm in the corner of the end zone. So it was only 3 people that knew. Well, I guess Coach Sanders had 4 people that knew. But I didn't even tell Jay. I say running this play, y'all get in the end zone, and kept it around there. But it springboarded, and that was certainly a huge win for us.
That ball handling and mechanics, and that was part of what made Peyton so special. Right?
And it still is. The play fake and the handling of the ball and the discipline of the handoffs and the fake is. We're still working to get guys to do it nearly as well as he did.
It's hard work, isn't it?
It's concentration.
Yeah, it took a lot of pride in it, and that was just the way that they taught me here. It was something along the lines of, I can't remember who told me, probably either Coach Fulmer or Coach Cutcliffe, but if 10 other guys on a running play are going to be doing something, then you can be doing something too. I mean, it's not hard to hand off, but if you hand off and you carry out a fake the other way, or if you can actually block somebody, believe it or not, a quarterback can actually block a defensive end. Not physically, but
just
to hesitate them. But I took a lot of pride. As much film as I study, I watch just as much of myself. I'm watching defenses, but I'm watching myself a lot of the times and study my mechanics. I can't stand quarterbacks today, and you see it all the time, on a handoff. They hand it off and they watch. They do that ole and they watch. They become a spectator. But yet, when they have a play action, when they fake it, they do this big, dramatic, dip fake, and then they're going to keep it. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, hey, when he does something dramatic, he's got the ball. When he's kind of lazy, so I try to make him look exactly the same. I go back and watch old games, and I'd say, coming out toward that running back, I'd try to be able to determine, am I going to give it to him or is he going to keep it? And usually I couldn't tell because it looked the exact same the first 3 or 4 steps till you stick that ball out, and either you pull it back in or you give it to him. And it just, golly,
it's repetition.
Repetition and just work, and just, Coach Cutcliffe used to call it take pride in your ball handling, and you see a lot of older quarterbacks, 5th-year seniors or 14-year veterans in the NFL that kind of lose their mechanics, and that's one thing because of what I learned here at Tennessee I've been able to keep with me in the NFL, and you can throw a lot of touchdowns that way. They can be wide open sometimes, which is a lot more easy.
Was Joey Kent your favorite receiver?
People ask me that all the time. There's no way I would have had the career that I had or be where I am today without Joey Kent. But I was so and that was the other great thing about coming here. I knew they were always going to get some guys to throw to and to block for me and to give them and to hand the ball to. But Joey really kind of established me. I remember coming here as a freshman in that summer and throwing to him, and I remember Coach Fulmer said, "Who do you like out there?" And I was like, "This guy Joey Kent looks pretty good to me," and he was going to be a sophomore. But he really kind of established me, and it's something about when you have somebody to lean on as a freshman, you lean on them early. He becomes like an older brother. You just keep leaning on him. That's just kind of what I kept doing. But Joey, he was a very quiet guy, but he used to just tell me, "Hey, get me involved, and I'll help you out." That's all he said, and you took his word for it. And but between that, Marcus Nash, Peerless Price, Jermaine Copeland, just I could go on and on about the targets that I had, but certainly Joey and I had a special bond.
You had a lot of big games, but there's one I think a lot of people talk about is your shootout with Tim Couch. Talk about that. That was so ballyhooed to these great quarterbacks and the 2 best in the country.
I don't think, probably not one of Coach Chavis's proudest games or the D coordinator for Kentucky. It wasn't exactly a defensive, some defensive battles out there, but yeah, one of those games where you have it like that. Heck, they did all kind of crazy things on offense, and they made some our defense actually played pretty good. They made some crazy plays, 80-yard runs and scrambles and things like that. But yeah, anytime where it's fun to throw when you kind of have to throw to stay in it. That's kind of fun, and it was a true shootout, and with Tim being kind of a highly touted guy that I knew and kind of helped recruit when he was in high school. That was a fun game for the fans in the stands, for sure.
How was it for the coaching staff? You knew you had to outscore them that day.
We had to outscore them, and what did you end up with, 576? I can't remember.
530, 525 maybe. Couch had 470. That was chump change, man.
He knows exactly. yeah, it was one of those things where we're going to put it in Peyton's hands because obviously we were having a lot of difficulty for whatever reason, whether it was the gobble wobble that they did or whatever. Kentucky's always tough when Tennessee playing, but I mean, just probably really the two finest quarterbacks in college football at that particular time playing against. Not probably, it was.
It was a great shootout.
It was a great shootout, and this is typical of Peyton. Doing the dramatic things and making all the right plays, all the fundamental plays and everything. But guy was some just unbelievable plays and getting us down the field fast. And I
quick.
Peyton, let's slow down a little bit, use some of this clock.
They don't have to go back
get
on.
out of here so their defense doesn't have to go back out there.
You had another selling job with him. You had to keep him to come back for his senior season. How did that evolve?
That I'd like to think or like to say or like to take some credit for that, but we just had an honest exchange all along, and I didn't know what he was going to do till the morning, just a few minutes really before the press conference for sure, what they were going to do. He was honest with it.
It was you knew in the morning. I remember I called you late in the morning. I don't know if you really believed it. I woke you up.
You're right. You're right.
You're 2 in the morning.
You're right. That's right.
You probably didn't remember.
But I had to have the straight face for the press conference.
That's it.
That was what was on my mind, I guess. But he was straight up all the way. He was going to look at things and evaluate it. And I mean, he would have been the first pick if he'd gone out that year. But I think he truly, and I'll let him talk about that, I think he truly was enjoying college, enjoying his team, and wanted a chance to win the national championship, and felt like he could continue to improve. And probably from an NFL standpoint, there were some good things that could happen if he did wait a year. So we're obviously elated, because we were preparing the best we could, that he wouldn't be there. And it was a boost for this state. I mean, really. And I think probably for all of college football.
Peyton, I remember the fans bowl game after your junior year down in Orlando, yelling at you to stay.
Right.
Did that have any effect on you at all?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was really, like I said, what's the main reason you stayed? And once again, just the combination of things, and really just the support and the way that the people of Tennessee treated this kid from New Orleans for my first 3 years, from Memphis all the way to Johnson City, and it was something about my first 3 years here was so fast. I mean, the fact that I had to play there at UCLA and started 8 games as a freshman. I was always running the class, but I was running the class and running in practice because you always had something going on between interviews and community service. And so all of a sudden, we finished, we win that bowl game down in Orlando, and I say, God, this is it. I mean, I could, if I go pro, this is going to be it. I was kind of looking back, I have all these great things that have happened, but I want to have a year to kind of slow everything down, to reflect a little bit and to take everything in.
Because you graduated in 3 years.
I was going to graduate. I took 18 hours in the fall of my junior year, 22 in the spring. So, I mean, I was sprinting.
Now, that would tell you somebody's thinking about leaving.
Well, yeah. So I just, I really wanted to come back and be around these people, teachers, teammates, coaches, for a year when I could walk to class. And I took 9 hours of grad school and really got to kind of soak everything up. So it's really just kind of speaks a lot for the people in this university and in the state for why I wanted to stay.
Well, and something too, I don't think you get so wrapped up in your football career. You were also the National Scholar Athlete of the Year as well.
Well, I took a lot of pride in my academics and came from a good high school, and that was main reason. I mean, it's why you come to college to get your education. I mean, football is as important as to me. It always was second in that priority list, and but yeah, I mean, I graduated. I played good football, so I certainly had reasons to go. But I remember when I had up until April to decide, because there was a little loophole in there. If you were going to graduate that spring, you could have a few months later to decide. And I didn't want to lead anybody on. At the same time, before the bowl game, I was leaving. I said, this is my last week as a Vol. After the game, I go home to New Orleans. I'm by myself. I'm reading about the NFL. I'm leaving. Come back to school in the dorm or in my apartment, hanging around the fellas. I'm staying. I mean, so I had a lot of that back and forth. And finally, I just said, I want to do this. Why do I want to go be in some big city next year when I could be back here doing the same thing as a senior with the guys I came in with, to go out and maybe win a conference championship. This is what I want to do. But I remember when I told, we'd set this press conference, and this is what kills me about, and you include everybody that knows me, to think that I actually would have called this press conference in front of all these people and actually got on there and said, I'm leaving. Now, y'all that really know me, I remember Mike Keith, or it might have been Mike Keith said when he saw me walk in, he said, I could tell by the look in his eye, I knew he was leaving. He had that look, which makes me feel good. I didn't know I had that good of a gambler poker face. I remember when I told Coach Fulmer, this press conference had been set, and we're over eating in the dorm, and he comes over and kind of sits by me. We're kind of not really looking at each other. I'm kind of looking down, and he kind of says, you doing something on Tuesday? You making some kind of announcement? I went, yeah, I am. And kind of looked down. He went, you got to tell me anything? I went, no. He went, okay, all right. Kind of got up and left. That was it. He wasn't. And so, but like I said, but I remember I did call him at about 2 in the morning when I woke him up, and he was.
And you were up for the rest of the night after
that. I remember when I committed. I called. And I committed to Tennessee. He was in Philadelphia. I remember. I don't know who you were recruiting at 1 in the morning. And then, of course, when I committed, when I decided to stay, he was, of course, not here in Knoxville. But
he's a late night
something
guy
about 2 in the morning, making these decisions.
Yeah.
But that was exciting. And then like Coach said, the kind of the support and after that happened from the state was really kind of exciting. It made me feel real good. And I could tell I'd done the right thing.
I told him it'd be like Davy Crockett if he stayed. He'd become a Tennessee hero.
He also told me we could throw it a bunch my senior year.
And we did.
And I could drive his Lexus. But that part, I'm kidding. I remember we played Georgia that year, though, Bob. I remember Coach Fulmer and Coach Donnan had a nice little exchange after the game, but I remember it was kind of my fault because one of those, we had the lead, and Coach Fulmer told me, he said, we're going to air it out this year if you stay. Well, I promise you we will, which we always aired it out, but he said, we're really going to throw it, and which I knew we would anyway, but that was enticing to me. Obviously you want to throw, but I remember we kind of had the game in control, and it was one of those third downs where you just.
Well, they were waving a flag on the other sideline, over there.
But I remember he called a timeout, and just said, I said, you talk about those timeout exchanges. He said, well, we're just going to run the ball. I just said, well, what if they blitz? And he just went, well, they probably won't blitz. I said, what if they do blitz? And he said, they're not going to blitz. Just run the ball, So, get up there, and sure enough, they did blitz. And so I checked to the pass and hit, Nash on a fade route or something. And Donnan didn't like that very much. So it's my fault. He's having to, and I think Courtney's probably right next to him, here. But
here we are, all these years later, and we're finding out who was really responsible.
Exactly. But he told me he kept his word. He said we could throw, so it worked out.
But you got your championship in the SEC championship.
Well, that was fun. That was that game playing in Atlanta. That was a fun experience, and kind of a wild game. Crazy game. We tried to give it away, but that was fun. Just growing up with the Southeastern Conference history. With my dad playing there and being an SEC fan, that was fun and something we'll always remember.
We got to talk about the Heisman, losing the Heisman. Is it still something that bothers you a little bit, or are you way past it?
Well, yeah, I never got too much into it. I kind of had a bad feeling going up there that I just didn't feel like I was going to win it. Something about, I remember, they kind of had that poll thing during the season, and it was sort of supposed to be a pretty good indicator. I remember after that game against Kentucky, which was, probably my best game here, then I dropped in the poll. So, I don't know if they were ulterior or outside motives. People talk about that, the conspiracy and those kind of things. I never really got that far with it. So I just remember going up there, though. I didn't think I was going to win, but I, thought it was part of the process to go up there and be a part of it. So I think everybody else was a lot madder than I was. The only thing I always said is that I would like to have won it for this university because they never had one. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They had 4 guys that have come runner-ups, Lars Sella and Majors and Schuler and myself. And, I would like to have brought that to the university because Tennessee deserves one, and I think they need one. And so that part disappointed me because I felt like I let some people down. But for me, myself, like I said, I know I did everything that I could, as far as my senior year. And, I see a lot of people that tell me I got robbed or, that they don't, robbed isn't always the word they use. But it's, it's never been about individual awards. And people say that award when you're older, it's going to mean a lot more. But, I'm pretty content with what I did in college and kind of where I am now. the rate of success in the NFL for quarterbacks hadn't exactly been off the charts for those winners. So maybe I'm glad that I didn't win. Eli as well. Maybe that means Eli.
Archie Griffin didn't have a great. He won it twice.
Yeah, but for quarterbacks specifically recently. So maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that means I'll have a pretty good career.
I don't know that you could find a true Tennessee fan that's not mad about it still. And this coach is particularly mad about it still because it was taken away from him. And I don't think there's any question about that. It was a simple fact of a lot of different circumstances, I think, but they weren't going to have two Southern quarterbacks 2 years in a row coming and winning the Heisman Trophy. And, of course, all the hoopla that for ratings, to get the interest up, I guess, in the Heisman event, turned into a real travesty, I think, for college football because it was wrong, and it's still wrong.
Hi, my name is Lester McClain. I attended University of Tennessee from 1967 through 71. I led it in the season of 68, 69, and 70. I attended Antioch High School here in Nashville. I've been in the insurance business since college for the most part. We have two children, Treasure and Justin, that we're dearly proud of. I guess we think they're our greatest things. Treasure is an attorney in New York City, and my son Justin just completed his first year of medical school at Cornell in New York.
T. Martin from Mobile, Alabama, Williamson High School. I came to UT in 1996 and finished in 2000. Played quarterback, number 17. Played Pittsburgh Steelers for 2 years. This is my second year with the Oakland Raiders. And just been to the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been there for about 5 years where I have a place there. I'm enjoying it. Back and forth from California, where I live in Oakland, California during the football season. But enjoying that with 4-year-old fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, by the name of Amari and Ayadra. And they're starting kindergarten this year, so I'm getting prepared for that.
I'm Doug Dickey. I went to high school at Gainesville, Florida at PK Young High School, and went to college at the University of Florida. And I came to the University of Tennessee in December of 1963 as a head football coach, and was there through December of 1969. And I came back in September of 1985 as the athletic director and stayed there until I retired in the summer of 2003. I currently reside in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm still hired as a consultant to the University of Tennessee, and we have 5 children and we have 12 grandchildren. So keeping up with those grandchildren is a major part of our lives.
My name's Daryl Dickey from Knoxville, Tennessee is my hometown. Years I lettered at Tennessee was 80 through 85, 81 through 85. Wore number 11, played quarterback. I was a free agent in the NFL and had a tryout and didn't last very long with the San Diego Chargers. I am a college football coach. I coach at Florida State University. I coach the quarterbacks there right now and live in Tallahassee, Florida. I have 3 children. Karis, my daughter, is 14. Dallas, my son, is 11. And Drew is 9.
Eddie Brown played at Marion County High School in Jasper, Tennessee. Grew up in Helltown on Old Dam Road. And by the way, that's H-A-L-E-T-O-W-N. We actually have an exit off the interstate for that. Played at UT in 70, 71, 72, and 73. I was number 25 my whole career. I was free safety and strong safety, returned punts and kickoffs. Was drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the 8th round in 1974. Played in Cleveland for 1 year. Then George Allen brought me to the Redskins in 75. Played there 75, 76, 77, 78. Went to the Los Angeles Rams with Coach Allen. Played out there in 79 and 80. Went to the Super Bowl in 79. Back in 76, 77, I was all-pro punt returner, most valuable player for the Redskins. Then I played 2 years in the United States Football League, the USFL. We started in Chicago, played 1 year there. We moved our team to Arizona, and we were the Western Division champions there. Got married to my present wife, Diane Brown, and we live in Knoxville, Tennessee for the most part. I work for Jostens, people that make the Super Bowl rings and the class rings, graduation supplies. I've been with them almost 20 years now.
My name's Bill Bates. Lettered at the University of Tennessee from 79 to 82, and from Knoxville, Tennessee. Played high school football at Farragut High School. Wore number 40 at the University of Tennessee, and was a strong safety / free safety. I was a free agent for the Dallas Cowboys and playing for Coach Landry. Ended up being Special Teams Player of the Year my rookie year, and then the next year ended up going to the Pro Bowl as a Special Teams Player of the Year. We won 3 championships while I was there in Dallas, 3 out of 4 years. Right after I finished up my 15 years of playing experience with the Dallas Cowboys, I went right into coaching. I coached with Chan Gailey, coached with Dave Campo, and I am now in Jacksonville, Florida, as I was a special teams coach for a year there in Jacksonville, and now I'm kind of semi-retired, in between jobs, as the guys would say. I have a beautiful wife, Denise, former cheerleader there at the University of Tennessee. I have 5 kids, had triplets that are 2 boys and a girl that just turned 15. Our third boy is 13, and then I have another boy, surprise baby, that is 8.5. And I've been blessed by having a great family. Able to coach my kids in Jacksonville now. I'm the head coach of their 9th grade team, and for the first time they've ever had a team there, 9th grade team. And obviously coaching the younger ones too, but just enjoying myself there in Jacksonville, and looking forward to a great year with coaching these kids and trying to have a little fun and play a little more football.
Heath Schuler, Swain County High School in Bryson City, North Carolina. I lettered 3 years at the University of Tennessee, 1991, 1992, 1993. The jersey number was number 21, quarterback. Drafted by the Washington Redskins 1994 through 1996. 1997 through 1998 with the New Orleans Saints, where I was team captain. 1999 with the Oakland Raiders, where my career was done. Currently reside in Waynesville, North Carolina, with my lovely wife, Nicole, my son, Navy, and a little girl, Island, on the way. Been involved in real estate development.
Johnny Mills, Elizabethton High School, Elizabethton, Tennessee. I was a quarterback at Elizabethton High School, recruited to the University of Tennessee in 1963, lettered 1964, 5 and 6, number 85 as a wide receiver. Graduated from the University of Tennessee in 1967, had a lot of jobs between then and now. Drove a truck, heavy equipment operator, rode a motorcycle around the country for a couple of years, and now I have a greenhouse landscape business in Elizabethton, Tennessee with my wife Carla, my son Hannon, and my 1-year-old grandson, Holston Howard.
My name's Dale Jones. I'm from Cleveland, Tennessee, played at Bradley County. I went to Tennessee, played there from 83 through 86, played linebacker. I wore jersey 54. I live in Boone, North Carolina now with my wife, Donna, and I got a little baby girl, which is 3.5 months, Brooke. I'm a football coach at Appalachian State University, been there 8 years. Coach the defensive line and co-defensive coordinator.
My name is Paul Newmoff. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Played high school at Eastmore High School, famous for Archie Griffin. They actually named the high school after him. I was an All-American too, but they didn't name the stadium or anything after me. Came to the University of Tennessee in 63. I was there from 63 to 67, and I was number 50. I started out as an offensive split end. And then my junior year I got switched to defensive end. My senior year I got switched to linebacker. And that's where I played my senior year, and then got drafted by Detroit and went up to Detroit and played 12 years up there. And in 1980, moved my family back to Knoxville. I've got 3 children, 6 grandchildren. And right now I'm semi-retired and fool around a little bit with real estate and just have enjoyed the ride I've been on for 58 years.
My name is Keith DeLong. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. Played on the Lawrence Lions. I lettered in UT from 1985 to 1988. My jersey was number 33, and I was a linebacker. I played 5 years with the San Francisco 49ers. 1989, I was a member of the Super Bowl team. I've got 3 kids. I've got 10, 8, and 4, 2 girls and a boy. Jordan Catherine's my 10-year-old, and then Griffin Keith is my 8-year-old, and Emerson Grace is my 4-year-old. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I build homes, and I've been married for 11 years.
My name is Andy Kozar. I went to Adams Township High School in St. Michael, Pennsylvania. I played at UT in 1950 to 52, number 86, and I was a fullback. I've been a professor for about 40 years, I guess. I can't even count the years. I just retired. I was at the University of Michigan for about 8 years, and then I have been at the University of Tennessee and still there right now on a post-tenure appointment. I've got a wife, Marion Higgs Kozar, who is from Virginia. I met her at the University of Tennessee, and we were married. We had 3 children, Amy, AJ, and Ann, and one's an academic counselor at Florida State, and my daughter's account executive in Raleigh and TV, and I've got a son that's a major in the Army at Hampton, Virginia, at Fort Monroe.
My name is Hank Laricella. I went to Holy Cross High School in New Orleans, Louisiana, and of course following that to University of Tennessee. I led it in 49, 50, and 51. Not in 48. I started in 48, but freshmen were not allowed to play varsity ball then. My number was number 27, and I played tailback in the old single wing. I was drafted by the Detroit Lions, and then there, right before the end of the exhibition season, I was traded to the then Dallas Texans. Following that, I had to go in the service. I served 2 years in the Army as an officer, and on returning from the Army, I went back home to New Orleans and entered the family business, real estate development business with my father and my brother. In addition to that, I did have an experience of having served in the Louisiana legislature for 32 years. My wife, Betty, was a classmate of mine in Tennessee. She was from Cincinnati, Ohio. Very, very outstanding co-ed on campus and was very active in campus activities. We had 5 children, still have 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and they scattered all over the country, children and grandchildren.
My name's Philip Fulmer. I'm the current head football coach at the University of Tennessee. Born in Winchester, Tennessee, played football at Franklin County High School. Attended the University of Tennessee from 68 through 72, 71 being my last season. Went from there to Wichita State for 5 years, to Vanderbilt, of all places, for a year, and have been back at Tennessee since 1980, the last 12 as the head football coach. I played offensive guard at the University of Tennessee. Was number 65. Was captain my senior year. Very proud of that. I'm married. My wife Vicki. I have 4 children. Son Philip Jr., Courtney, the oldest girl Brittany, who dives for the Lady Vols, is my middle daughter, and Allison is a senior in high school, and my youngest.
Condridge Holloway, hometown Huntsville, Alabama. Went to Lee High School and lettered at the University of Tennessee, 72, 3 and 4 in football, and 3, 4, and 5 in baseball. Position quarterback, number 7. I played in the Canadian Football League for 13 years. 1975 through 88, the Ottawa Rough Riders for 6 years, Toronto Argonauts for 6 years, British Columbia Lions for 1 year, inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame 1999. 3 Grey Cup appearances, 2 Grey Cup championships. I am currently employed by the University of Tennessee. My title is Assistant Athletic Director for Player Relations. Been there since 1998. I'm married to my lovely wife Courtney and have 2 children, Condrich III and Jasmine 13, Jasmine Condrich 3.
Will Overstreet from Jackson, Mississippi, and played at Jackson Prep. From 98 to 2001, 4 years lettered, and played defensive end, and I was number 90. In 2002, 2003, and going into my 3rd year in 2004 with the Atlanta Falcons. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, because I play with the Falcons, so I live there most of the year. I have no children currently, and my family, mother and father, live in Jackson, Mississippi. They now live in Birmingham, Alabama. I have a sister that lives in New York and is a photographer for Vogue right now, and so I guess to me, it's just me right now.
Stanley Morgan from Easley, South Carolina. Played at Easley High School. 73, 74, 75, and 76, number 21. I played flanker, split end, tailback. 77 through 89 with the New England Patriots, 1990 with the Indianapolis Colts, and 1992 with the Denver Broncos. Went to the Super Bowl in 85, Super Bowl 20 with the New England Patriots, All-Pro 4 times. Still hold most of the Patriots receiving records. I work for Federal Express in the international department. I have 2 girls, 28 and 24, got to think. And my proud moment is I'm a grandpapa.
My name is Frank Emanuel. I went to high school at Warwick High School in Newport News, Virginia. I was at the university from 1962 through 65. I was a linebacker, and I was number 50. I was the second player picked by the Miami Dolphins. I played with the Miami Dolphins from 1966 through 1970. I was Rookie of the Year with them in 1966, and I played my last year with the New Orleans Saints in 1971. I coached for the University of Tennessee. I coached for Memphis State University, or University of Memphis now, Vanderbilt University, Wichita State University, and University of Louisville. And I coached in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I coached with the Jacksonville Bulls. I've since retired and I'm in financial services business in Tampa, Florida, where I currently live. I have 2 children, Brian Emanuel, who is 29, and Brooke Emanuel, who is 26, both happily married. And I have a fiancée named Linda Knorr.
Jason Witten, Elizabethton, Tennessee, and Elizabethton High School. I lettered from 2000 to 2003. I played tight end for my last 2 years. My first years, I played defensive end. They moved me over to tight end. I was number 1. In 2003, I started with the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm currently with them still. I was first team all-rookie tight end. I currently live in Dallas, Texas. Married to Michelle. She's an RN for Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas.
Larry Severs, Clinton, Tennessee, and played the high school ball in Clinton High School. I was number 89 wide receiver and lettered 1974, 75, and 76. I was actually drafted in the 4th round by Seattle and was with 4 different teams in the 77 and 78. Never stayed a full season with any of them, but got to see Tampa, Philadelphia, and Green Bay also. I'm in the food service and vending business, have been for 20 years now in the Knoxville area. I actually live in Blount County in Louisville, Tennessee. Have a wife. We'll be married 20 years this September. My daughter Jennifer is a senior and will be playing volleyball in Maryville College next year. My son Charlie will be a junior in high school and has potential to play some ball down the road, some football. So we'll see how that goes.
My name is John Majors.
I played high school football 1 year at Lynchburg High School, Tennessee, and 3 years at Huntland High School in Tennessee. My hometowns are Lynchburg and Huntland, Tennessee, both of which I call my hometowns. Right now, I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was a freshman in 1953. I was a letterman in 1954, and I was a letterman and starter in 1955 and 1956 as a single-wing tailback on offense and as a safety man on defense, playing both ways. My number was 45. I played pro ball with the Montreal Alouettes in the Canadian League in 1957. After I left the Montreal Alouettes, I coached at Tennessee from 1957, 58, 59. Then I coached at Mississippi State from 1960 through 1963, and then the University of Arkansas from 1964 through 1967. And I was a head coach for 29 years, 5 years at Iowa State from 1968 through 72, 4 years at the University of Pittsburgh from 1973 through 1976, where we won the national championship in 76. And at the University of Tennessee, I was head coach from 1977 through 1992. And then I was head coach at the University of Pittsburgh from 1993 through 1996. And presently, I am a special assistant to the chancellor and to the athletics director at the University of Pittsburgh. My family, I have married to my wife, Mary Lynn. I have a son, John, who's 39, and a daughter, Mary, who is 37. And I have 3 grandsons, the oldest of which is, oldest of whom or whatever, is living with my wife and me. We've had him since the 1st grade. He's now 17 years old. His name is Brandon. And my son, John, has 2 sons in Knoxville named Owen, 4 years old, and Tristan, 8 years old.
My name is Bobby Majors. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I played high school ball at Franklin County in Winchester, Tennessee. I was there 68 through 71, lettered in 69, 70, 71, and I played free safety, and I ran back punts. I punted, and I also kicked off. Jersey number 44. We won the SEC championship in 1969. I was All-American, consensus All-American, and I was voted the outstanding defensive player of the year for the entire country in 1970. I intercepted 10 interception passes and led the nation in interceptions, and I led the nation in punt returns in 1969 when I was a sophomore. Played pro ball with the Cleveland Browns in 72 and 73, and played 1 year with the Memphis Football League, the World Football League with the Memphis Southmen in 1974. I have a company in Chattanooga. It's called Kobax, which is right here on my shirt. It's a industrial chemical company, and it's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I'm married, and I have 2 adopted little girls that we adopted from China, a 7-year-old, 19-month-old, and I have 3 grown boys that are 35, 27, and 25.
Haywood Harris went to Knoxville High School in Knoxville. I've had the great privilege of being at the University of Tennessee as publicity man from 1960 to, well, part-time work right now. And it's just been a great thrill all the way to be with not only championship teams, but some of the teams that didn't have championship years. Just the great people that we have at this session talking about the great times at Tennessee. Ball fans are probably like fans elsewhere. We think they're the best in the world, and I'm sure everybody else thinks theirs are, because really it's like family when you're a University of Tennessee person. I'm married to Carolyn Joe Harris, and we have 3 children and 4 grandchildren. We spend an awful lot of time with the grandchildren now.
I'm Bob Johnson. I now live in Cincinnati, but I'm really from Cleveland, Tennessee, and played at Bradley County High School in Cleveland. Played offensive center. I was number 54, and I played before freshmen could play, so 65, 6, and 7. I started with the Bengals in 1968 and played till 1979. I played in the Pro Bowl a couple of times, and I made all-pro, wire service things, AP and UP, 3 or 4 times. Live in Cincinnati. I've always been in the adhesive business. Bought the company, sold the company, still run a division of what is a $400 million company, a medium-sized company. And I've got 2 kids. They're great kids. I've got a son who lives in Chicago and a daughter who lives in Cincinnati. They're both right at 32 and 30. I have a grandson named Hunter in Chicago, and there's nothing more fun than he is.
I'm Gus Manning from Knoxville, Tennessee. Been affiliated with the University of Tennessee Athletic Department for 54 years. General Nealon hired me. I was his administrative assistant there at Tennessee and sports information director for 10 years, and have held every position there in the athletic department. My wife's deceased. I have one son and have 3 grandchildren.
Steve Kiner. I'm from Tampa, Florida. Played football at Hillsborough High School. I played freshman ball in '66, varsity ball from '67 to '69. I lettered all 3 years. Linebacker. I started in the league in '70, played for the Cowboys my rookie year. I was at New England for 2 years. I was with the Redskins a year and then 5 years with the Oilers. Got in '70, got out in '79. Loved the game. I was all-pro my second year in the league. I played in 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl V and Super Bowl VII. How about that? We had to fold our helmets up and put them in our pocket after the game. So I live in Carrollton, Georgia, which is about 40 miles west of Atlanta. I work at Emory University in the Department of Psychiatry, and I manage the emergency room psychiatric services for 2 hospitals. I have 3 daughters, 22, 20, and 16. My oldest daughter's name is Stacy. She is married. Her name's Stacy Strange, and I have a granddaughter by her. Her name's Emma, and my other daughter's name is Haley. She's at West Georgia University. And then I have a 16-year-old in high school. And I have a wife, by the way. Her name's Carol, and she's quite a lady. Puts up with me, So.
Bill Battle, Birmingham, Alabama, West End High School. I was a coach from 1966 through '69 as an assistant coach under Doug Dickey, and from '70 through '76 was the head coach. I played football at Alabama and went into coaching right after I got through. I went to graduate school at Oklahoma and coached as a graduate assistant under Bud Wilkinson his last year. I was an ROTC graduate, so I had a 2-year military hitch, and I was assigned to West Point to the Army Athletic Association and coached at Army under Paul Dietzel for 2 years, and then Doug hired me at Tennessee, and I coached there for 4 years before getting the job. I've got 3 children. My oldest son, Pat, is the CEO of our family business, of our company, and basically running the company now. My middle son, Mike, worked for us for several years, and then he decided he wanted to go do his own thing, so he's in a commercial floor covering business in Atlanta with a friend. And then my daughter, our baby, also works with us in the company, and I have 6 beautiful grandchildren from age 14 to about 6 months.
My name is Darwin Walker. I played high school football at Walterboro High School in Walterboro, South Carolina. The years I lettered was, I guess, 4. My jersey number was 58. The position I played was defensive tackle. I was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, released by the Cardinals, and went to the Philadelphia Eagles. I've been there my whole career, and I'm still there, going on 5 years now. We've been to the playoffs every year I've been there. We've been to 3 NFC championships, and we have 3 NFC Eastern championship wins. In my 3rd season, I led the NFL at my position statistically, and in my 4th season, I was in the top 5. I have no children. I'm single. I have a home in South Carolina, where I'm from, and of course, I have a home in South New Jersey, where I am during the season, because that's right across the bridge from Philadelphia. And I have a place here in Knoxville that I maintain here with my business.
Bob Kessling. My hometown is Kettering, Ohio, and I played high school football at Fairmont West. I was a freshman walk-on in 1972 and played fullback on the freshman team. I wore number 49 in the games. We actually played freshman football, and so we played 7 games that year. We played at Vanderbilt, and we played at Alabama, we played Georgia Tech, and I got to carry the ball some and played, so that was a lot of fun. After I quit playing football, I got into the media, got a job at a local radio station, and then I went to work for a TV station in Knoxville, an NBC affiliate, stayed there for 18 years, started doing SEC football and basketball on Jefferson Pilot Sports, and then when John Ward retired, and after the 98 season, then I took over as the lead announcer on the Vol Network, and I've been there for the last, I'll be starting my 6th season on the Vol Network. I got a wife who I met in high school, married my high school sweetheart. We have 2 daughters. One's a junior at UT, and one will be a freshman at Queens College over in Charlotte, North Carolina.